Hello, everyone! I'm so glad everyone is here. If you're new, I'm Shannon. I'm the Spoonie Stitcher. A Spoonie is somebody who has a chronic condition, and a Stitcher is someone who makes stuff with textiles. Yarn. Tonight, my guest is the fabulous Megan Kreiner. She is one of the Amigurumi designers that, if you see her style, you know it, and it's significantly hers, and I love that so much. And she is one of the people who inspired me to want to do amigurumi, and she is one of the first 5 pattern books that I ever bought was one of hers. So everyone, please welcome Megan Kreiner. Hello, Megan.
Hi.
It's so nice that you are willing to do this. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm delighted. I always like talking about this sort of stuff, so I'm so happy that you asked.
Yes. So first of all, if you want to just give a brief little introduction of yourself.
Oh, sure.
For those of them who don't know you, and you must be new to crochet if you don't know who this is.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Megan. I do write crochet books, but it's actually kind of my side gig, my side hobby. Full time, I'm actually an animator. So I work out here in California. I work for feature animation at some of the bigger studios. But because I'll put it in a nutshell, because work like that tends to be very in support of other people's visions, directors and supervisors and stuff like that. And because it's very computer oriented, I always have kind of gravitated towards the arts that involved, more tactical stuff or tactile things. So like baking, cooking, sewing, that sort of stuff. And in this case, crochet and knitting. I do come from a line of people that my mother, my grandmother all did a lot of knitting and a lot of crochet. So around the time I want to say it's about 10 years ago. God, the time goes so fast. It's about 10 years ago. I had been working, I think at that time at DreamWorks, and I had been a little stuck, I suppose, in one of the particular departments, and I didn't really feel like I was getting to stretch very much creatively. So I kind of picked up the crochet pattern writing as more of an opportunity to kind of scratch that itch. So for me, designing was what was kind of keeping me sane to go into work and then just do what the directors were asking, do what supervisors were asking. And I'm sure a lot of people find, some kind of therapeutic piece of doing crochet and knitting as a kind of a salve to what they might be dealing with during the day. And because creativity, from a creative standpoint, the ownership of what I do most of the time doesn't really belong to me. The patterns were a really great way for me to kind of have that ability to have some ownership over the designs. So I started off with Martingale. I sent them a box of samples and a book pitch. At that time, you could download a pitch form from their website, and I kind of, in a way, fashioned it the way I would pitch a movie, because we could do that too at DreamWorks. So I had some practice. And kind of the big idea there with the pitching is that you want to make sure that you're convincing them there's an audience out there that is untapped, and that your book is going to be the thing that's going to access that untapped audience. So that's kind of how I pushed the book. And I didn't hear from them initially. So I sent them an email and I just said, hey, I sent a box of stuff. Like, what's up? Like, oh yeah, well, we'll check it out for you. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. And then they emailed me back, I don't know, 24, 48 hours later. And they were like, oh yeah, this was so cool. Let's talk about putting a book together. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I feel a little guilty kind of making it sound it was like that easy, but I guess in this instance, it just kind of worked out. But I would credit mostly my professional background to kind of helping kind of get going. And yeah, I've just been kind of writing the books. I think I've written like 13 at this point, between books and kits and whatnot. So, but yeah, I've just been kind of doing it as just a good creative outlet so that I can go to work and give my all at work and not feel like I'm not getting to kind of own anything creatively. So yeah, that's kind of how it's been. So and lots of different publishers, lots of different properties, some video tutorials, which I've discovered I'm very I guess I'm too anxious of a personality maybe to do video tutorials. I get really nervous when I'm trying to like talk through stuff. I'm a bit of a fast talker. I'm from New York originally, so it's dangerous when you're trying to give a tutorial and you're going like a mile a minute because you're nervous. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and honestly, I really kind of enjoyed having that as a something that I could do, a cathartic, creative outlet that I could have. Yeah, and now we're here and we're chatting.
So, you saw one of my videos. Mm-hmm. You emailed me because you saw my video where I reviewed your this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that one.
And it was so sweet. You wanted to send me book 2, but it was already on its way.
Yeah.
And so you were like, okay, well, which book don't you have?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. And then you decided to send me a couple of your books and you signed them, which was so sweet. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
I love it. I even made for this one because you sent me this one.
Yeah.
So for tonight, I made the puppy.
Oh, fuzzy. Excellent.
I changed the face because I was trying to use up my scraps.
That's how you do it, though. Got it.
So yeah, I'm a dog person. So I am curious. How did you learn to crochet?
So it's a funny thing. You kind of get fake memories sometimes of like where you pick this stuff up. I know that my grandmother and my mom were huge knitters, so I kind of assumed that I had gotten it from them. But the funny thing is that I know they could crochet. Like my grandmother made lots of granny square things, but I don't actually. When I thought about it a little harder, I was like, I don't think I actually like sat with her and learned how to crochet, but I knew how to knit pretty well. So it wasn't that much of a leap to kind of get into crochet, especially since, at that point you could get YouTube tutorials and videos. I had kind of a early our Amigurumi book that had just super simplistic shapes in it, but I kind of picked up a lot from that. And at my first job out here in California was over at Sony Imageworks in Culver City, and we had a knitting circle there, and the idea was we're supposed to like make baby blankets and stuff for people in the department and whatnot. But we had a couple of people that were doing crochet there, and they were doing things that were in garments. They were kind of playing around with it, and I kind of really liked the idea, that sculptural aspect of crochet that would just hold up a lot better than knitted material tends to. And because my forte is 3D, it just really felt like that was a really cool mix of kind of my understanding of fibercraft at that point and understanding how 3D objects are put together. So I kind of just started messing around with stuff and seeing what I could kind of Frankenstein from the more simple shapes I was finding in these books. And it kind of just, you work your way up from there. So yeah, I would say that it's a little more self-taught maybe than I maybe initially thought it was, but I would definitely say that the roots are definitely very familial.
Okay. I have my list of questions here because I am a spoonie and my brain goes poof. So when did you start designing? Like when you told how you kind of came up with the idea of I want to design one day, but when did you actually start going, oh, instead of just designing, I actually want to make a book, or I want to do a kit or something like that?
So I would say it's probably kind of coincides with having my first child, most likely, because I think when you have a kid or have a baby, you're thinking in terms of well, what do I want them interacting with? And for us, it's a funny thing. I think and this is this is kind of, I think, true. When you're in the industry that's producing mass entertainment for children, you tend to be a little more selective about what your child's getting exposed to, because you understand what it, hours and hours and hours of exposure like that would do. It's kind of like you talk to the people that are in charge of like iPhone development and social media, and they're like, oh yeah, I don't let my kids use that stuff. So I think it's very so for me, at least, I very much wanted my children to have access to as many toys that could really spur on like narrative play and imaginative play. And I kind of really just like the idea of, I don't know, designing some stuff for them and things that I think that they would enjoy and stuff that I felt would, kind of spark that kind of creative type of play. And because I do a lot of movie work, most of the ideas that I generate and most of the ideas I'm working in are very narrative. It's, there's a story to tell. So when I'm putting together even those first kits, I think my first one was Crochet a Zoo. In my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to crochet a whole set. I'm going to, put a whole design set together, and they will all work together. And then if my kids want to play, they can play zoo. And they'll have everything they need here. They'll have the keepers, they'll have the animals. I think at one point I even designed like a big blanket that you could put on the floor, and it had all the areas that you would need in your zoo. So in my mind, I wanted to create something that was very cohesive and it was complete. So if you wanted the full zoo set, you could. If your kid was just like obsessed about lions, you could just do a whole bunch of lions and you could be done there. But I like the idea that you could kind of carve out pieces of the book and still have like a little sub story that happened there depending on what your child would like. And I think that's something that I've tried to carry over to all my books. A really important part of the book work that I do in industry, and a big part of the understanding, is that when you're designing the look of a picture and look of a movie, that it's everything is very cohesive. Everything looks like it belongs to the same universe. When I'm doing the design work for crochet, I think what happens a lot in my books, you'll see a lot of like pieces get reused. So like all heads might be the same, or like the arms and legs might be really similar. That's not really coming from a place of like, oh, well, I'll just copy and paste and I'll be done. It's more of a matter of like, well, if I do it this way, then I know that everything is, on a scale, from a scale standpoint, will all be similar in shape and size, and they'll all look like they belong together. So it's more an effort to support the idea that these are all things of the same set and they all live in the same world. Even as the designs have kind of changed and become more complicated and complex, like the stuff that I did for my Crochet a Zoo book is considerably simpler than the stuff I did for my crochet creatures, the mythology creatures that I did recently that have the fur and everything. So, but the basic underpinnings, the basic underlying idea that I've had of like, I got to keep it consistent and they all have to work together, and there has to be a whole story that a kid can tell, or a fan that wants to just make it for themselves can tell if they want to. Yes, if they want to just go ahead and just do it all, they can definitely play and have a good story that they can tell with it. So I think that's just in general how everyone's kind of thought about it.
I love how, I don't think anyone else has ever done this. So I love how you took the nativity, and instead of just making it a nativity set, you made them all ornaments. So that like you could put one ornament and tell the story as, the days progress. And it's almost like an advent, which is amazing. I thought that was so cool.
The crochet book for the Christmas ornament book was a lot of fun because, it's funny, like the size of them is the lovely thing about crochet is that it's really adjustable. So if you wanted to do like a play set for a kid or something like that and do an nativity play set, you just have to up the hook and up the yarn, have something that is, something you can actually play with versus something that's more decorative. So I think that's a lovely option that you get with crochet that can be a little trickier, I think, with some other materials and some other crafts. But I was really drawn to the ornament series because there's already so many wonderful stories and subsets of narratives that are told around the season. So everyone knows Santa's workshop and what might be there, and they know the nativity and what might be there, and they know like what might be under, if one was decorating the house, like what they would expect there and stuff. So it's really, I found that book was very easy to kind of put together. And the second volume was actually written into the first volume. Like all of those were part of one big book, and we realized just how long it was getting. So that's how it got split into 2 volumes. First, and then the second, although we had there was some trickiness with the publishing with the second one. So it was supposed to come out a whole year earlier. And I
had it on pre-order.
I felt so bad because I had made announcements, and that, like, marketing for me, like I don't do social media well. It's just because I'm fortunate in that, like, this is something I can just do because I like to do it, not because I'm dependent on it. As like, I don't promote and socialize and do all this stuff, which is an incredible amount of work. Like, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. So I don't have that scenario. So therefore I don't feel like so pressured to put a TikTok together or put a Facebook thing together or anything else. And I had gone out of my way to, like, put a promotion out there for it. And then the book just never materialized. And I was like, oh God, I have to, like, apologize now. And I don't even know, like, it's not anything I did, obviously, but I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where the book went. So
no, yeah. I think it's so cool. You kind of have, like you said, you have subsections in your book, which is awesome, but you have the best, and I have read a lot of pattern books, the best illustrations. They actually make sense. They're cute, but they actually make sense.
Yeah.
They're really, really detailed, and I love them.
I think that's definitely a result of being frustrated with, I'm sure as you've experienced and I've experienced and stuff, being frustrated in that, like, I don't get what's happening here. I can't finish this because I don't know what's going on. And having I think in general, the folks that do instructions the best are Lego and IKEA. Those people know what they're doing, and you don't need to read anything. Like, if there's a language barrier, you can still look at that stuff and figure out how stuff goes together. So I really, really wanted to try to get as close to that as I could, which is why a lot of times the illustrations are multiple steps, all in one drawing and stuff, with the arrows and everything else. Even just trying to, like, kind of show where measurements go, because I think the most frustrating thing people often experience is they'll do a pattern and it'll look nothing like the picture when they're done. And not their fault and not the author's fault, but, like, if stylistically you're leaving a lot of stuff up to chance, like, just put the eyes on the head, they're going to end up everywhere. And you may really want, you're spending all that time, you may really, really want it to look like the picture, and then it's, you get frustrated that it didn't. So I can totally appreciate that. And I know how long some of these patterns take to make. So the last thing I want to do is someone to finish it and be annoyed that it didn't look like the picture when they were done. But that was something I did early on. My very, very first book, I had an illustrator working with us. Martingale was really insistent that this illustrator work with us. And there were so many notes I had to send, and so many drawings I had to send. I was like, I'm just going to ask to do this next time myself and not have an illustrator, because this would just be faster. Because I knew how to use Illustrator. I was like, I'll just do it myself. But the funny thing was, I must have been pregnant with my daughter at the time. And I was telling them, I was like, well, I want to do the illustrations. And like, oh, well, we don't think that they didn't hire me for my own book to illustrate, because they said they couldn't, they knew that I wouldn't be available soon. And I was like, I'm sorry, are you telling me I can't illustrate because I'm pregnant? I don't think that you're allowed to deny, like, use that as criteria to not give me this job. Because quite frankly, your other illustrator could, like, walk in front of a bus tomorrow, and that could be a problem too. So it's not as if, at least mine's planned. We know, like, in 6 weeks, you might not have access to me, but, like, what? So I had to do it one more time. But by the third book, I was like, I have to do this illustrations myself. Like, can we just please save ourselves some time and money here?
What was the book that you got to illustrate? What was the first book you got to illustrate?
Oh, I want to say it might have been Bath Time Buddies. Remember the Bath Time Buddies? It was either Bath Time Buddies. Yeah, it might have been Bath Time Buddies, because I did Crochet Farm, Crochet Zoo, Crochet Farm, and Bath Time Buddies. I may have been, like, already throwing stuff in by that point. Yeah. And I do show up as the illustrator. I'm listed as one of the illustrators. The one thing I don't illustrate, I do stay away from, are the technical drawings in the front. So that's stuff that they put in the front to show you how to do the stitches. I don't want to touch those because
Yeah.
a lot of the companies that publish already have those illustrations pre-done. Yeah.
See, you guys, look how great these are. You totally understand what that says.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't touch the technical illustrations. And I think one thing you have to kind of watch out for is that if you are doing your own illustrations, the publishers get really weird about whether or not they're going to pay you to do that. Because if you have an outside illustrator, you know, they'll pay for that person to illustrate. If you're doing it, sometimes they try to get away with not paying you for that, and you have to kind of remind them that it is a separate skill set entirely. I've even had publishers try to just give me more of an advance, and I'm just like, but that's the kind of the money that I'm making from the book. You're just making it take longer for me to collect things, so that's still not the same. But for the most part, I've been able to illustrate pretty much everything. I say, except for the kits. The kits are the only thing where they get really insistent. They want photos, and I'm not a fan. It's hard to see what's happening, and then you have to make everything in like 3 or 4 different times and 3 or 4 different pieces. I don't like that as much because you just can't show as many steps in a photo, even if it's just step by step. But yeah, illustrations are fun. I like those. I like doing them.
Well, real quickly, can I just touch on your job as an animator? Do you like animate the characters or the background, or
so
depending on
so it's both. So I've been working in industry for like 20-ish years now. And my first movie, the first movie that I was actually doing art stuff on was How to Train Your Dragon. So that was my first. And I was doing layout at that time, so that was kind of if I match it to someone who is on a real set, it would be the set dressers. Pretty much set dressers and camera operators are the layout department. But doing digitally, obviously, because it's digital animated movies. And but at some point I took some additional online classes and kind of made the switch over to crowd animation. And crowd animation would be all the extras. And for Dragons 2 and Dragons 3, I was actually doing the crowd animation. So really, if you look at the backgrounds, and the dragons are flying around, the dragons are eating things, the Vikings are milling around, the Vikings are in crowds cheering and stuff like that. So me and my department, we were in charge of all that animation.
Oh, wow.
And and I was doing that for a very, very long time, longer than I would have liked, because normally you would do crowds maybe for a picture or two, and then you would kind of want to move on to character animation, which is the folks that have the dialogue and up front and center and stuff. And it just wasn't happening. Like it was, I was in a weird place at that time at DreamWorks where they were very, there wasn't a lot of locomotion you could have. You didn't have the options really to move around the departments. You kind of just got stuck. So ultimately I decided, I think by, about like 8 years into it, I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like I really, really need to move on to something that's a little more creatively, interesting. So even though I was, as I said, writing the books to keep myself sane creatively while I was there, I did make the jump over to Disney at that point. So my first film at Disney was Raya, and I was there for like a month, and then and I was there for a month, and then COVID. So where this little cubby that I'm in right now is the space I set up to work in after we all got sent home with our laptops and screens. But from that point, I did manage to get over to character animation. So character animation is obviously the folks that talk and they're front and center. So yeah, I'm just kind of doing that right now. Right now, we're working on Zootopia 2. So that's the current.
I'm so excited for that one.
Yeah, so we're excited. It's going really great. It's just really, really tight schedule, unfortunately, because our previous film, Moana 2, that kind of got slated in really, really late in the game. We had an original film that was in the docket and we had been working on, but then because we really needed something that had a solid base already, because things were kind of rocky in terms of the stuff that was getting put out. The studio decided that Moana 2 was going to be a safer film to produce. However, we were already really short on time, so that film got put together very fast, and now this film kind of got pushed up because we needed resources that were for Zootopia to get jumped onto Moana 2. So now we're in this really, really tight race to kind of get it done. So that's so
yeah, it comes out in November. I mean,
yeah. It'll be interesting. I mean, we'll try our best to get it done. But it wouldn't be the first movie that, I mean, I doubt it'll happen, but it wouldn't be the first movie that Disney's released that wasn't done. I think Beauty and the Beast had that situation where when it was released to the theaters, there was still some stuff that was in boarding.
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't seem to mind. I think so. But I don't know if they get away with it now. But back then, they all seemed to think it was okay. So
I think it's really cool. My uncle worked for Disney for licensing for years.
Oh, cool.
So his office was covered in stuff, and their little nameplates, like if they had a name that the Disney character had the same name, they had a little nameplate on their office door, and there was a picture of the character with their and then some of them they just obviously they picked their character, but I mean I saw, you know, somebody's name was Rex, and there was Rex the T-Rex, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool.
I got Megara. Megara is the closest I get, which is fine. I think she's awesome. So like I'm that character option.
She's part of my personality.
She doesn't take any crap. I like that. I like that in that person.
So okay, since we are talking about different studios and different companies and stuff like that, can you talk about working with companies with IPs and kits and stuff like that? Because I think we'd all be pretty curious about that.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, I'm sure that we've all been on Etsy and everything is inspired by, you know, it's. I'm not a lawyer. I'm married to one, but I'm not a lawyer, and I wouldn't be able to you know, it's a very much it depends type of situation, and allegedly and so forth and so on. But my understanding, at least, of IP and copyright and trademarks and stuff like that is that trying to cover yourself by saying something's inspired by does not cover you. And the reason why Disney and other companies might come down on you if you are producing something that has their IP on it is because if companies don't aggressively defend their copyrights and trademarks, they could lose them. So there is ulterior motives other than people saying, we're just being mean and picking on people. It's a matter of that if you don't defend your copyright, you could lose your copyright. So you, in a way, you kind of have a hand forced in a way to be defensive about that sort of stuff. For the folks that are able to produce stuff that contains IP from a studio like Disney, they do have licensing agreements. It's very unlikely, it's very, very rare that a licensing agreement will be granted to an individual. So like an Etsy seller or whatnot is most likely not going to be able to get granted that because it's just not worth the time and effort for the company to even have a lawyer draft something up and follow up with you and make sure that you're paying the residuals and so forth and so on. So the majority of people that work with said licensing agreements, and this is true for Disney, it's also true for DreamWorks, it's true for Universal, like so Warner Brothers, anybody else, they'll have producers, these companies. I think in my case it was Quarto or something that was handling the licensing. So you'll have companies that'll handle the licensing distribution stuff. So you're not even going through Disney, you're going through a company like that. And the companies you go through, it matters what the medium is that you're planning to use the IP for. So in my instance, it was going to be for these crochet kits. They were not my idea. They were not anything that I pitched. I was approached by a book producer, and the book producer basically serves in the role of, like, if you think of a producer in a movie, they're there to kind of coordinate and facilitate, just kind of pulling all the pieces together so that you can start with an idea and you end up with a movie. In this case, you start with an idea and you end up with a crochet kit. So in terms of the moving pieces that happen there, you need your author, you need photographer, you need a publishing company, like an actual company that will do the book part of it. You'll need somebody that does the distribution. You'll need somebody that can handle the folks that'll produce the materials that need to go into the book and the packaging of the book. And then you actually have the licensee holder, the company that has the IP. And so the book producer is there to kind of facilitate the conversations that need to happen between you and whoever you need to talk to. So like, I never talked to anybody that was in charge of packaging anything or doing the kit stuff, which is why I'm so clueless when people call me and email me and say, what was the yarn in this kit? I ran out. I'm like, I have no idea. It's red. And I'm sorry it ran out. And I'm sorry the hook isn't very good, but like, I had nothing to do with that at all. Like, so it's you kind of only get to talk to the people they choose for you to have a conversation with. And even that can be tricky. So I was approached. So I was going to fill the role of author and designer. And so with an IP project like that, it's going to usually be a flat rate. So you're not getting royalties off of this sort of thing. It's flat rate. You get paid once and that's it. Honestly, like I was lucky to even have my name on the kit. Like that is something that you can kind of hope that they'll do for you, but there's no guarantee you'll even get the author credit on it. So you really are just kind of a stop along the way. Disney and the book producers were really nice, and I got my name on there, so yay for that, and appreciate that. So in how I went about it was that I was given a list of the characters they wanted. I tend to do I sketch everything before I start on anything, and I'll sketch everything to scale. So I will always have something that I can hold the pieces that I'm creating against to make sure that I'm hitting the mark in terms of like, okay, well, this ear needs this big and this face needs this big. And it just gives me a point of measurement and something to aim for, target. It also helps me kind of make sure that everything is this appropriate size to one another. Like the Disney kit, like if you line up all those characters, they should be the correct size compared to each other. So that was very important, obviously.
So like you want Mickey shorter than Goofy.
Exactly. So yeah, and Donald's a little shorter than Mickey. So like that's all done on purpose. I wasn't like, oh, it just ended up like that. Like I drew them like that. And then here's it. Even down to one thing that I knew that was really tricky, and I know it's not everyone's favorite, but I tend to template the eyes. So I know that everyone's like, well, I just want to crochet the eyes, or I just want to use the, the safety eyes. And I get it. For the purposes of keeping something really on model, eyeballs really kind of make or break a lot of the look. Those instances, I was just taking the eyeballs. Like I would find art of the characters and I would just take the eyeballs straight off of that, whatever the eye shape was. And that, like, I would make sure that it actually looked correct and was sitting in the right spot on the head, and it was spaced in the correct, spatially where it needed to be on the head. And I think in a way that really helped make the characters look a lot more like the characters, because it kind of makes something look Mickey-like, but Mickey's got a very, very specific set of proportions that you need to kind of hit for it to look like Mickey. So I did the designs got bought off on, then I would have to start doing the actual samples. And I would say that, so just, I guess, a little weird secret that I don't share about my books. The vast majority of the samples you see in the book is the one and only sample I ever made. So I don't redo pieces. Like that's it. That's what it looked like. My first prototype is probably what's in the book. And that's because I take a lot of time to make sure that the design is drawn out properly, and then I can just start knocking through it. So I always have that roadmap, and therefore I don't have to do a lot of iterations, because as a parent that's working, I don't have time. It's a necessity of time that I just have to get it right the first time. But with a company like Disney, for example, Disney's going to be very particular. So for the most part, when I was getting stuff kicked back, for example, it was because the colors were off. And I got really frustrated about that, because I wasn't being given any sort of color templates or being told like, oh, it's this Pantone color. Like, even if you go online, like I had Jiminy Cricket, for example. I think I did Jiminy Cricket like 3 times because the colors were never right. Like I'd send it off and they're like, oh, this isn't the right green. But like, depending on what build frame you pull from, depending on what light Jiminy Cricket was in, it's going to be different. So it was really tricky to figure out like, well, which green did you want, because he comes in a lot of iterations of green, depending if you're looking at a piece of merchandise versus a still out of the movie. And even if it's still out of the movie, you don't know if someone's color corrected it for the internet. So that's where I got tripped up, at least. But in terms of the actual design work, already knowing how particular Disney was going to be about being on model, I was being really careful about that. So once all those patterns are done and everyone's like checked off and Disney's happy, they get sent off to the book producer, and you send over your manuscript. What makes kits really tricky is that it's not really your voice in there. Kits, as everyone knows, the book's really small. So my style of writing, I try to be really, I try to make sure all the details are in there, and I don't want to be confusing. So, I know even just putting the number before or after the stitch can mean something different. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, like, this means that you're doubling the stitch versus like you're just doing 2 of the stitch, depending on where the 2 is, it can make a big difference. Part of the challenging part of doing kits is that you hand over the manuscript and then they're kind of taking your style and they're translating it into their style. So whether or not you get much access to the first proof or the second proof to make sure that it's getting translated correctly, it's iffy. So sometimes the first like real copy of it you see is the one they send you, and then you're looking through it going like, well, that's not right, and like, this isn't what I wrote. So that can be a little frustrating, because again, as the author, your name's on it, people are going to come back to you when it's not correct. Yeah. You're like, I'm sorry, that's not what I wrote. So there's that piece that makes kits challenging, and then kits tend to want photos. So they're not going to pay you, and they're not going to pay an illustrator to do those illustrations that I like to do in my books. So what they want usually is step-by-step with the samples. And so do that stuff. And again, I don't like iterating. I like to just get it one and done. So having to do like 3 Mickey heads just to show what one has to do to get the Mickey heads to look correct, not my favorite. So you have to iterate, and then you have to take the pictures so that you can see how to pose it, because ultimately those all get sent off to the book producer, and then they retake all the pictures with their hand model and their photographer and stuff. So those are the pictures that actually get in there. Right. And then that you use your own materials. I used the different yarn than what ended up in the kit. For example, the pictures are of the yarns that I used, but the kit yarn is whatever, the book producers and the folks putting together have chosen. I have no idea what the brand is. I only know the colors are what they are, and they try to actually match to whatever you pick. But then yeah, it's very much out of your hands at that point. So you just kind of hope for the best. And it went well enough with the classic Disney stuff, so I ended up doing the Winnie the Pooh one as well. But yeah, it's an interesting project, and having the IP at least to work with was a lot of fun. In that I think it allowed me a little bit of an understanding of like how that actually works, and some of the difficulties I think of people that would love to work with the IP and like, I want to make a book and I'll legitimately pay Disney and I just want to license and stuff. Mm-hmm. From what I'm explaining right now, this is kind of why it's really hard to do that. It's not impossible, but like you would, if you really, really wanted to do something like that, you would actually have to you'd have to go to the book producer and pitch it, and they would have to like it enough to want to take it to both the licensee and the book publishing company, and then everyone would just have to agree. And at the end of the day, you probably wouldn't get royalties on it anyway. So I would say that's probably the reality of using IP. But yeah, it's fun. It's just kind of, it's different from like using your own designs. Mm-hmm. But I do have, and if we have time, I do have a really fun story about copyright and trademark and design stuff that isn't covered, which kind of popped up on me once because I had a designer reach out to me to accuse me of stealing a design that they had done. So we could talk about that too, but I'm curious if I want to give a pause if you have another question.
Yeah, I do. Well, one thing is I actually have a theory, and I've mentioned it in my reviews because I reviewed a lot of those kits. I've reviewed a lot of the Thunder Bay Press kits because they are all kind of written the same. So makes me very suspicious that they have the same editor and that editor knows nothing about crochet.
The editors, and because you have two different people, you have like a tech editor, editor. So like, and you would hope that your tech editors are actually, so you have folks that are, and I had this from Martingale, so I understood that this was the way it was. And with, Springhouse? No, it's Springhouse. The folks that are reviewing and checking your pattern to make sure it's correct are not always the people that are writing the ultimate text. So some of it, make sure you got your counts right and the stitches are right and like things make sense. But then the translation of like, and this is how we need to word it, might be two different people. So, you know, it's depending on the budget, you know, maybe they just have the same person doing everything, which is a lot then, because then that person's having to reproduce all of your stuff.
Yeah.
And do the editing. So yeah, it could be, I would say that it's probably a combination of just the amount of work and deadline and just kind of being required to, you know, format it a certain way. So yeah, it's definitely, as I said, they don't have a lot of time for the back and forth stuff. So.
Okay, but you have done these kits. You have designed for these kits. In your professional opinion, would either of the kits, that at least the ones you've designed, would you say they are beginner friendly?
My kits, I would say probably not. And that's the tricky part, because a lot of times the publishers really want to market them as beginner friendly because that's going to be the audience. And then that's how you get the bad reviews, because then people are beginners and they go on Amazon and they're like, this kit sucks and I can't do anything and it doesn't look anything like me. Like, sorry, I know, but also not a beginner kit. You don't really get to like be, people like to generalize on what a beginner kit is, because presumably, you know, the thing about crochet is that, you know, it's really only like a very pretty small set of stitches. And like, but I would, you know, I certainly wouldn't suggest someone jump into something that's got, you know, soft sculpting and increases and decreasing and like openings that you have to work around and stuff like that. Like, and you can kind of tell based on the photos. Like, I would say if I could look at a kit and say like, my very first Amigurumi kit, like it was all just these oval shapes. It was just a bunch of footballs stuck together. I was like, okay, that looks pretty easy. And you can tell, I mean, it's just increases in decreases all worked in around, and that was it. Like every single one of the characters was in there. So you could look at the picture and say like, yeah, that's probably a beginner kit. I would say that, and it's not to say that there aren't beginner kits out there. I would say the woobles are obviously really, you know, aimed for that. I would say that the only real turnoff is that is the price point. I was a little shocked actually how much they were, but I mean, I can't knock it. They're popular, so anything that gets people crocheting, I mean, like I can't say, you know, I'm not gonna say boo about that. So that's great. But I would say,
I will say, because I can say it, I will say, and I've said it in my videos, they have got to proofread the PDFs that they send with the pattern.
I mean, there's hardly, I'm so simple. I mean, as I say, I look at them, I'm like, that's a pretty simple pattern. So like you would hope that it would be correct. No? Okay.
It's a good thing that a lot of people use the videos, because I got to tell you, the PDFs, it's like, did you read this?
Yeah. It's
But I do want to know kind of a fun question. You design a lot of animals, so you must like animals. Do you have a favorite animal you like to do more than others?
I mean, I've always been intrigued with horses. I think that's just something that I always liked working with, practice with. But I think it's, you know, also because the shape, especially of horse legs, there's something so appealing to that, because you have all these curves and straights. And I think this is kind of tapping into like the animator brain for me. A huge, you know, important fundamental of working with animation is making sure you're balancing your straights with your curves. And so oftentimes if you're animating an arm, well animated stuff, at least if you know, do still frame, take a look, design wise, you're going to have limbs and stuff like that have a straight on one side and a curve on the other, and then a curve and then a straight, and that back and forth makes forms look really cool and adds like this really neat flow to it and stuff. They're just fun to look at. and they're like satisfying to look at, especially, you know, if you're doing stuff to the proportions and the measurements, and you're starting big and going small and big again. So there's all sorts of stuff that you can do that makes something graphically really, really satisfying. And there's something about a horse, I think, form that really lends itself really well to that. But it's, you know, it's tricky also because obviously you have the reversed leg in the back, and it's, we had gosh, this was at DreamWorks. We had a person that actually taught animal anatomy at I think UCLA or something, come in to work with us. I think we might have been working on Bad Guys at the time, and we had a bunch of animals that were going to be pretty complicated to animate. We had snakes and we had arachnids and whatnot, and or even when we had dragons, we needed someone to come in and talk to us about how animal structure worked and how bones were supposed to move, and like where weight was supposed to be shifting, and like you know, just from an anatomical standpoint, just understanding how stuff is supposed to move. Because if you don't know how it moves, and you don't know where the weight has to go, and you don't know where the center of gravity is going to be, or functionally how things need to how things are going to react when you're stopping and starting and going slow or going fast and stuff like that, it's going to show up in the animation. Like you'll look at it and it'll look off. So from a structure standpoint, you know, I really, really like, those were things that I really latched onto. I really liked those types of sessions that we would have. So I think in a way, because things look simple, like you can simplify animal shapes a lot, but they can still kind of look off, or you can simplify them a lot and they still look like they land. And I like trying to figure out how simplistic can we make this, but still make it feel like I could look at this and it feels like satisfying, and it's you know, properly put together and stuff like that. So I know with the animal stuff, I'll tend to, like the mythological animals, I will actually, you know, I will pull up those animals. I will pull up pieces of those animals, and I will try to figure out, like, okay, well, this is how the bones go here. So if I know where the bones and the muscles go and stuff, then when I do the shape, even if this is kind of bulbous, I know underneath this is what it would probably look like. And it really helps, because then when you're done, it's convincing. You feel like this is something that was structured correctly. So I think that's kind of why I like animals the best. And definitely get away with a lot more with animals. I think you get a lot of uncanny valley stuff with humans, and honestly, I've never been able to crochet very well and make them feel as cute, as appealing as animals, I suppose. Maybe it's the lack of fur. So
these are my humans. There.
See, that's perfect. And it's, I mean, but that, you know, that's so stylized at that point that it's going to be cute. But yeah, since I tend, like, I think my stuff gravitates towards more realistic, I just find humans tend to be not as cute as I like them to be. It's hard to be appealing when you want to make them really realistic.
Let's go to any, let's see if anyone has questions in the comments section real quick.
Cool.
Which of your books would be more suited for beginners?
The Chunky Animal to Crochet book, the one that you had pulled up earlier, that looks like big pillows. That's a really good one for beginners, because that's pretty much the same body shape over and over and over again. Yeah. So that guy, Cuddly Crochet Curtis. Yeah. So that one's great for beginners, because not only are you looking at some very repetitive and simplistic shapes, which for the purposes of what this book is supposed to be, it's supposed to kind of allow you to relax a little bit and not feel stressed that you're going to run into something that you don't know how to handle, and all of a sudden your animal's only half done, because now you've hit a part where you're like, I don't know, this doesn't like match anything I did before. It's supposed to be comfortable in that idea that if you knocked out a body, you knocked out a leg on one animal, you can knock them all out for the next bunch. But the idea of interchangeable pieces, there's a section in the back of the book saying, like, hey, these animals aren't in the book, but like if you want to mix and match, you can get these animals and stuff. So it's to encourage folks to, you know, decide, well, I need this animal. It's not here. I have a kid that really loves gorillas or platypuses and stuff like that, but I know the pieces in this book. So it's kind of drove a lot of the choices in terms of the animals that were chosen for that book, so that you would have those pieces if you wanted to build something else. That's a great beginner book. Any of the Martingale books would probably be really fine. Those were early on in my writing career, so those were very simplistic. They're probably a little harder to come by because Martingale is no longer in business. But I know that they existed at
The
ebook.
zoo? Is that the zoo, the farm, those?
Crochet a Farm, Bath Time Buddies. So that was all them. And I would say Bath Time Buddies is probably the trickier of them. The zoo and the farm are probably the easier ones. And again, the idea of you're starting off something easy and then building up. Like for example, the farm book starts off with chickens. The chickens are the legs for the bigger animals. So if you make a chicken, you'll start on a larger animal and you're like, oh, I recognize this from the chicken pattern. And you can, it's meant to kind of de-escalate maybe the apprehension you might feel of doing something that's a little more complex than the last pattern. So they are meant to start with an easy tutorial type level type thing, and then you can move on to the trickier stuff. So I would say even the simpler kits that I've done, which are the dog, the cat, and the horse one, because they are kits and because the how-to section is going to not be nearly as robust, I would say the books are still better to stick to. So yeah, I would say probably those my 4 picks for in regards to the easiest books that or the simpler books that I've done. But yeah, it's, you can go start with those and then you can move on to ones that are less a little more involved.
Do you have a favorite yarn that you like to use?
Let's see here. I want to say Cascade Comfort is a really good toy yarn. It's really smooth, so you don't get that weird like fuzzy pilling that happens sometimes. Barocco. Sorry, Barocco Comfort. My bad. I use Cascade too. Cascade yarns I've used for like the ornament books because they have such a really, really great palette of colors. The Knit Picks yarns are pretty good. I use them on occasion. But I would say that when you are looking for good toy yarns, you really want stuff that has, for example, the Barocco Comfort yarns are really nice. And I use those in my dinosaur book and my actually it's in a lot of the books now. The mythological animal books and stuff, that's the yarn that's underneath all the fur. I like it because even though it maybe takes a little bit of a learning curve, it's almost like the plies in it are little threads instead of it being like twisted fiber. And because it's like that, it lends itself to a much smoother, I think, a much more stable surface, because they're going to get played with. And that's the thing, like my kids have played with pretty much all of the samples that have gone in my books. So I have seen what happens to yarns that don't stand up. Yes. Nice. So I have them tested vigorously in my household. And I can say, for example, like my first books, the Martingale books, I think I was using like Vanna's Choice because I wanted yarns that were like really accessible and not very expensive. And they're great yarns. I would say though that they don't necessarily stand up really well to a lot of heavy play from kids. So if you just make it and then it sits on your desk, perfectly awesome yarn. If your kid is playing with it, it's probably going to start pilling at some point because your kid's going to be really rough with it. So I guess, you kind of pick and choose yarns based on like, ultimately who's going to get it and who's going to play with it. So yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on yarn. I don't necessarily have like a go-to brand, but Barocco and Cascade have always been like pretty incredible in terms of their supports for my books. So I almost try to find books that would fit one of them well. And go with that. So I know that my animal books and the ones that are meant to be played with tend to go to Barocco yarns. And then the stuff that's more decorative, I tend to lean towards Cascade, just so I can kind of give both of them an opportunity to get showcased. Because as I said, I like them both. So yeah.
Do you, I'm sure you get burnout from design and stuff like that. How do you deal with it?
Well, I've kind of been a little bit of a burnout slump at the moment. So January, and I hadn't actually posted it on my my Facebook page because I'm usually okay about doing that stuff. So we finished with the volume 2 crochet Christmas thing finally came out, and I was able to post that. And then mid-January we had the Eden fire, and we had a house in Altadena. So unfortunately, we did lose that structure, but my family and I live in, we've been living in for a while now. We've had a rental in a different neighborhood, and we rented it for the kids so they could attend a school that could be a school system that was going to be more supportive of what their educational needs were. But it was in an area that we like just couldn't really afford, or not reasonably afford anything that we felt was going to be worth the cost. So we had our house in Altadena rented out to another family. So unfortunately, they had been living in there when the fires came through. So that situation, coupled with just work being really crazy lately, I really did have to kind of cut loose working on anything. I had some ideas, like I have some stuff sketched out. My agent has those concepts. One that I was kind of really excited about that I'm hoping I'll kind of get that mojo back and start working on again. One was a layout series where I wanted to, again, kind of mix and match. So, you know, you can kind of put together sets for babies for like baby showers and stuff like that. So each of them it would be the same pattern each time. So the same blanket pattern, same sweater, same booties and stuff like that. But then you could duplicate stitch onto it, whatever the motif was for that particular chapter. And there would be a unique toy for each chapter. So that was one idea. And then there was another one where I wanted to just produce little kind of to-go toys. So kind of these almost like contained little play sets that you could, clean up with a drawstring or something like that. And everything contains, stays in there. But they meant to be like, soft, quiet things to play with. And I think maybe that stems from my I hate to use the word disdain. It's very strong, but I don't like going out to restaurants and having to listen to iPhones going off on tables next door and whatnot. So with my kids, they always had either drawing pads or other little toys to keep them occupied. But even those, I mean, it's hard plastic. They can make noise also. So I wanted to something that, you can give your kid in the car, you can give your kid at a in a restaurant or something like that, and they could play and it would be really quiet because it's soft. And then, when they're done, it's, you just kind of pack it all back in and it's meant to be very portable that way. So, so I had those ideas and I started sketching them a little bit, and then January happened and then work happened and I was like, okay, I'm gonna need to just take a moment, step back a little bit. So, yeah. So, but I'm hoping to get back into it at some point.
Well, I hope you do, because I definitely want more books. Would you like to tell your story that you wanted to tell?
Oh yeah, no. So I think this will be really like kind of a helpful little anecdote for folks that do this sort of stuff, design their own. So in regards to copyright, and again, not a lawyer, this is my personal understanding, may not be totally accurate. My apologies if it's not. My understanding is that, like,
oh my,
my understanding of things like crochet patterns kind of fall in the same category as things like recipes or, clothing patterns, sewing patterns, stuff like that. Like, you can't copyright a shirt. You can't copyright how to make brownies, for example, because these are the final product is, it's not so much the final product, it's the idea that you're writing up instructions and directions on how to make something. So if we could copyright that sort of stuff, whoever wrote the pattern to make the first crocheted spear would have it, and then no one could have a crochet spear in their book afterwards. So you can't do that when it comes to instructive stuff of this nature. And there are other things as well that you can't really copyright. So something like style, for example. So if you did something in the style of like an artist you really like let's say you're really into Calvin and Hobbes or something like that, and you, I have a industry friend out here. His name is Brian Kessinger, and he does these little Kylo things. So he took the Calvin and Hobbes style and he did like Star Wars stuff. Now, needless to say, he would still actually be in some copyright trouble because he's using Star Wars IP. So even though the style is of Bill Watterson and Calvin and Hobbes, it's still Star Wars. So he's just fortunate to work for Disney and stuff like that. So I'm sure he's worked something out because he's awesome and he does their design work and stuff. But the idea there is if you wanted to draw a portrait of someone in the style of Calvin and Hobbes, my understanding is he wouldn't be able to go after you and say like, hey, you can't use an ink line that looks like that. If you use Calvin and Hobbes in the drawing with the person, then you're in trouble because that's someone's IP. So I had done this little series of, I called them Chunkamals. And it's a pattern you can get off of my website or off of Ravelry. And it's a really simplistic little thing. I was just trying to play with a common complaint I get about my patterns is that there's lots of pieces. There's so many pieces. I have just so many pieces together. And that's, unfortunately, you get a kind of a trade-off. You can keep the pieces, you can keep the pattern relatively simple, but if you still want it to look very stylistic, sometimes you end up with more things to sew together. But if you want to sew less things together, then the patterns start becoming a lot more complicated because you have to work the shaping into the twist that happens when you're working in something in the round. So I'm sure we've all seen these amazing patterns. Again, getting back to horses, you can make a horse body in one shape, all seamed up with no extra pieces, but it's going to be something that maybe more advanced crocheters can manage. You have to keep in mind, like, where is the shaping going to land? And I have to make sure that the leg faces backwards at this point in the pattern. So it gets complex. And I wanted to kind of do a cute little something that didn't involve so much sewing together. So I wanted the body and the legs to be together. So you build the legs and then you kind of do a little bit of a stomach shape and then you incorporate the legs into that and then you get the little body and you're done. It's not a unique look at all. I've seen plenty of patterns that look like this. It's pretty common. It's just this chunky little thing with like little, like a think piggy banks. That's kind of what it looks like. That's what the body looks like. And I produced this pattern and I had it out there and people seemed to like it. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do another series. The first ones I did was all little zoo animals. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do farm animals. And this designer, I want to say they were from France, contacted me and they were like, we need you to take this down. You copied our pattern, you copied our design and stuff like that. And they sent me this image and the body looked similar. Sure. And I was like, okay, I've never heard of you, I've never seen your pattern. I just, by the nature of it, I can't have done copyright infringement because I nothing to copy. I don't know who you are. I've never seen a pattern before. So I tried to be nice about it. I was like, look, I mean, like, I'm sorry, but like, this isn't an infringement. This is just, we have similar looking designs, but you can't copyright that. Like, you can't copyright chubby body with little legs. You know, that's not a thing you can have ownership over. And they were getting kind of insistent. I didn't want to just write them off. I didn't expect them to come all the way to California to drag me into court either. But I didn't want them to continue harassing me because this day and age, if you piss someone off, there's nothing stopping them from, you know, going to Amazon and crapping all over your reviews. And like, not that at all. I wanted to just convince them that I was right and they were wrong and that we could just leave on good terms like that. So in order to prove my case, I went onto Ravelry and pulled 20 patterns that were older than their pattern, that had the same exact body design. And I sent that to them. I was like, okay, so if we're going to be fair about this, I'm happy to alert all of these people that your design came after theirs and there might be an issue here. So if you'd like me to start reaching out to them and make the same argument that you're making to me, we can all have a conversation about it, or you can just leave me alone. And oh, by the way, I went on your website, but I went into, what did I do? I went into the Wayback Machine. So I don't know if folks are familiar with this, but you can go into this website called the Wayback Machine and you can see old cached versions of websites. And so I went back into their website to see what other patterns they might have done. And I found Star Wars patterns. And I was working for Disney at the time. So and if you would want me to talk to legal at Disney, I'm pretty sure that probably wouldn't be too keen on the fact that you use their IP for this and they were paying. So more or less, I basically said, just go away. It's like, I'm not interested in having an argument with you. You can't sue someone over this. And quite frankly, it's not as if you're being terribly careful yourself. So, you know, people in glass houses, so forth and so on. And they acquiesced. They were basically like, okay, well, you know, like, I don't know if I really can make much of an argument now. But it was a really interesting opportunity to kind of explore that. You know, it was because I myself would probably want to know, like, okay, well, why can't you, you know, complain? Because, you know, someone might go and make, you know, mythological animals that look like mine animals and stuff. As long as they're not copying. So in the books that I have, for example, the stuff that's copyright that someone can't just take and reuse, for example, the photos, the romance copy that happens at the top of the books, anything that I wrote that's just verbiage, the stuff that I wouldn't probably be able to protect, how to do the stitches, for example. And I got to say that is probably the most challenging part, because each time I go to a new publisher, I have to rewrite that entire how-to section. And there's only so many ways you could explain how to make a slip knot using a certain number of words. So I do tend to plagiarize myself a little bit sometimes, only because I don't really have a better way to explain something. But because it's very instructive and because it's my verbiage anyway, no one's really gotten too upset about it or split hairs like that. But that's kind of where things get to weird gray areas. So I would say my how-to sections are a gray area. But then if I wrote a pattern to crochet a little orb and someone else wrote a pattern to crochet an orb and it was similar, same stitch count or something, we couldn't go after each other because we're just explaining how to make this thing. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how everything kind of works out like that. But I'm sure if you wanted to bring a lawyer into it, they could come up with far more verbose reasons why this is good and this is not okay, and so forth and so on. But that's at least my very armchair understanding of it.
I was a criminal justice major, and I took legal classes, but mostly mine are like straight up, criminal law, as in like, going after another person.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn about like contract law. So I'm a very different world.
Yeah.
But I am curious, if you did want to give anyone, I know there are budding designers, including myself, in chat. So if you would like to give any advice to designers, that would be great.
Yeah. So I guess it kind of depends, like maybe kind of making some choices early on about like where you think you want to fit into the whole like design realm. Like, are you interested in just doing singular patterns? Are you interested in producing an ebook? Are you interested in producing like a physical book? That sort of stuff. Do you want to work with a publisher? Do you want to self-publish? So I think it's important to kind of explore those avenues, because if you kind of just throw yourself into designing without kind of knowing how you're going to facilitate getting that design out to the masses, that can be, that's going to make more work for you. Like, so you do want to make that that planning step of like, okay, ultimately I'm going to produce a standalone patterns. I'm going to produce PDF e-patterns, and I'm going to put them out there. So that's going to mean that you are going to need to do the design. You'll need to write the pattern. So those are obvious, but then you're going to say, oh, well, now how do I handle the how-to section? Am I going to take photos? Am I going to illustrate? Am I just going to write and hope for the best and like that people don't want or need illustrations or something like that? Am I going to need someone to check the patterns for me? I'm going to need testers. Like, how am I going to go back out getting testers and stuff? What is the platform I'm going to use to send my stuff out there? And what is just so unfortunate now is like, how do I protect my pattern from getting ripped off? And that's where things get really, really complicated, because there's so little you can do, unfortunately, when folks steal something and then they put it on their own Ravelry website or their own Etsy website and stuff like that. So, you expect to play a lot of whack-a-mole where you're just hunting people down doing that and reporting them. So that can be a frustrating part of the process. So I think, we're talking standalone patterns right now. You're producing them, you're sending them out there. You're not really shelling out any additional money and stuff like that. It's just you and your patterns and your wherewithal and sending them out there. When you're doing that sort of stuff and understanding your payment platform, like where you're going to collect the money from, how you're going to process that, like all that financial stuff that you got to deal with. Yeah. So you want to kind of look at all those models and decide, like, I'll get to keep more of the money. Like, understand that, like, when all is said and done, when I make a book and stuff, what I'm getting back in royalties is like $1 or $2 per book. It's not a lot. So I would probably make almost as much money just selling standalone patterns if I kicked enough of them out there. And I think for the most part, your expectation of the standalone patterns, for that to make you money is going to happen in the beginning before other people can get a hand up, get a hold of them and then kind of recirculate them without your permission. So you kind of have to expect that first bump, and then things kind of like that as folks become a little less honest about it. So you got that option. You can do your own patterns and put them out there on a Ravelry site or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can do an ebook. That would probably require you to I always like looking at samples of stuff that I would like to model my own work after. So if you have books that you really enjoy already or ebooks you really enjoy, comb through them. Why do you like this? How many patterns are in here? How long is it? And stuff like that. Like, consider that a template. And like, when you're talking ebooks, now there's an expectation that you probably need to have a how-to section. You're going to have to manage that. How-to sections are a pain in the butt, but they are good to have. Also expect that if you start producing stuff at that scale, people are going to start hounding you for YouTube videos. And for someone who doesn't like making YouTube videos, that can be really tough because you're like, I don't have one, but here, check out this designer. I send people to a lot of other designers for that stuff. I'm like, check out Planet June. It's really great for like, tutorials and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because in a way, I don't really even need to feel like I need to reinvent that wheel. There are more than enough people out there that have done lovely YouTube videos that I have no problem sending people off to check it out if they get confused. But if it's a written format that you're doing, you have to do something to address, especially if your patterns are geared towards beginners. If you have a pattern that is definitely marketed for intermediate to advanced, you can probably get away with not having nearly as robust unless you're having some really specialty, special stitches or techniques and stuff. Then you need to list those. But the beginner stuff, you might say like, I expect you already know how to do a slip knot, so we're just going to move ahead. And that is a good cue to someone that if they don't know how to do it, maybe this pattern isn't for them just yet. Then you want to talk self-publishing physical books. So then your options become, okay, not only do you have to write the patterns, write the how-to section, manage the illustrations or the photos. At that point, now you're looking at, you got to register your books. You've got to manage some of the additional artwork. Like, are you printing on demand? Are you going to print like 1,000 books out and hope that you could sell them all? Now you have to store them and deal with shipping and so forth and stuff. So self-publishing, again, you keep more of the profit, but there's a lot more upfront costs that you're going to be dealing with that sort of thing. There are, publishing software you'll have to deal with. There's all the patterns I write all go into Google Docs. Every single book I've ever written is in a Google Doc. And that's because Google Docs iterate. So if my computer crashes, it doesn't matter. It's sitting on Google Docs. So it's never local to my computer. I've heard enough horror stories from folks that have lost chunks of their work and stuff because it was physically sitting on their laptops or whatever like that. So I like always having access if I want to have access. And as I'm going along designing stuff, I almost exclusively use strike through when I'm writing. So I might do a head and it's not looking quite right, and I will just strike through that section and I will rewrite it below. But I will always be able to see what I wrote prior. So delete anything. I only start deleting when I've made a copy of that and I'm ready to start editing it. Then I'll start pulling stuff out that I don't need and try to get it formulated down to like a nice, clean looking manuscript. So again, if you're self-publishing, then you need to take that and put it in some sort of actual publishing software that is going to be formatted properly for a printer. There's usually, printers have certain requirements in regards to like how they fit to the pages and how you want to format them and how their software is going to read it. You may at that point really need someone who does editing. Because even with an editor, there's still stuff that goes in my books where I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe we like left that whole part out. Or like, oh, I misspelled this. And like, oh my gosh, that's not how I spell my name. That could be like, that hasn't happened. But, it could. When you look at it long enough, like you get really blind to a lot of this stuff. So you want people to like a tech editor and like a content editor. You want people to be able to look at that stuff, proofreading. And then the last kind of option is to let someone else handle it. So you become the author, you get a contract with a publishing company, you agree to a pitch that you've put together, not a lot of companies will take unsolicited pitches for books. Martingale was an interesting case in that you had to make you would make a few samples. So I made some samples and I drew everything else. So they had a whole bunch of drawings along with a couple of samples of physically what these things would look like. And then a written up pitch where, again, you really got to think in terms of like, I have the money. I have like 5 of these books to pick from. Why yours? Like, why your book about farm animals and not these 5 others? And like, why would people buy this when there's 20 other farm animal books out there? So you have to figure out what it is about yours that makes it marketable, sellable. What's your niche audience? Like, who are you marketing this to? Probably going to have a little bit better traction if it is something that a general audience can have. If you do, the more complex you make a book, I think the smaller the audience the publishers will think you're going to have. Because, you know, your beginners are going to see this and go like, I don't want to get that. Like, it's scary.
Yeah.
So you have to make these choices and hope that you are preemptively picking what the editors are going to want to see and read. So for me, it was much about the narrative stuff. It was about the designs. I found that there was a real similarity with a lot of the Amigurumi stuff. You get this wide head, little eyes, set far apart, or set close together. Everything looked really similar though. So I know that for me, I was kind of just went with my own stuff and just, this is how I design stuff. I'm just going to lean into that and just, you know, always a little more realistic. But it helped because then that was what my stuff looked like. So if you can just develop that, again, that's anything you can do to kind of separate yourself from that pack helps, because then at least they'll give it a look at least. So
you definitely have a very unique style. I can look at stuff and be like, oh, that's Megan Kreiner designed that. Which is why I was so confused when Amazon said you wrote the Beetlejuice kit.
Yeah, I didn't. I'd love to get some royalties on it, but like that was surprising when you said that. I was like, I hope it's a good kit if my name's on there. I'll get angry emails about that. I can't help anybody with that one. Oh no.
Well, I will let the public know if it's good. But I was really shocked because even when I was looking at it, I was excited because it was you. But at the same time, I was like, but that doesn't really look like her. But it said there was another designer, Janie somebody. So I mean, it said there were 2 designers, but it was you 2. Neither one of you have anything to do with this book.
I mean, but the kit actually exists. I'm finding that the amount of AI slop that is on Amazon right now with crochet stuff in particular, I mean, like, you know, just throw your name on there and stuff like that, which is super dangerous because then, you know, that's your reputation getting attached to something that wasn't written by you. But I hope it is a legit kit and that somebody just like copied something wrong. Okay. Is my name on my name isn't on the kit though, right?
No, the name is not on the box or the book, but it is on the listing.
Okay, so just an Amazon typo, and that happens a lot. Like having been on Amazon's receiving side, I'm like, this isn't right. Please fix this.
Yeah, because I'm looking at these humans.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's not her human. That's not how she makes a human. So I was really confused, but I was excited because I was like, she made a kit. But yeah, and then you were like, I didn't make the kit, and I went,
I know. I was like, oh, I don't know, but I mean, hey, your guess was correct.
I was like, well, but the other thing that hit me was like, I should be suspicious, but at the same time, okay, the other person designed the humans, right? And maybe Megan designed the animals. So
yeah, I did the illustrations. No, that's really fun. I would say that when you're working with a publisher, you do need to pick your battles. That's the interesting piece of working with publishers is that you do have to decide where you want to push back and where you can't. So I know for like my creepy crawly crochet books, I think that was with Dover. Dover was a funny one to work with because they were very opinionated about what they wanted in the books. And I mean, I tend to be, I don't know if this is something that folks notice necessarily, but like with the creepy crawly crochet book, for example, I tried to make the gender balance work because I was like, oh man, these characters, like, it's all male. It's like, I really need to make sure I have like some balance here. And I think that, you know, people, I would like to think it's just people my age that is a little blind to that because we grew up seeing such an imbalance of male versus female and so much of the stuff we consumed media wise, I was just normal. Like, you know, you go to a movie and in a crowd of people and stuff, there would be 20 men and 8 women. And you're like, yeah, that's normal. That's not how it works, you know. But I do try to make a really concerted effort to make sure that that I have just a good balance of everything in my books. So with that book, I was trying my best to make sure that I had enough female creepy crawly and characters in there. And those were the ones they wanted to cut. I was like, I can't let you do that. Like,
Oh,
because I think when they did the republish, they did end up cutting a couple of the female characters and not the male ones. And I don't know if it was just like that's what they decided, but like, and that's the thing. Like, oftentimes you don't really know what you're gonna have control over at the end because it's the publisher. If the publisher decides to make a last minute cut, you're probably not gonna be able to have much of a say. So for the convenience of having someone else deal with all of the aforementioned stuff that I said about having to produce your own ebooks or doing self-publishing stuff, there is a certain amount of control you do have to like accept that you're just not going to be able to have. And that could be things like the cover photo or the patterns in the book, or, you know, an insistence that we have to have a romance copy, even though you're like, I don't see any point in writing a romance copy. I think it's silly, but like they want it, so you have to. In the case with Martingale, fighting with them about wanting to do my own illustrations, or fighting with another company saying that no, you have to pay me for those illustrations. You can't like treat that as like a big package deal. Or even I've had a publisher keep my samples, and I did not agree to that, and having to fight with them about it. And I think ultimately I had to make the argument that like if people call me and like complain that there's a typo or something, I need the sample to check it to make sure that it's correct. And I got the samples back and there were still a couple missing. And it was told to me that the first time I did it, the same publisher, and they sent it back and there were samples missing. They were like, oh, we don't know what happened to them. And I'm like, I bet they were so sitting on someone's desk and you have no idea what happened to them. The second time it happened, the guy had the tenacity to write me a letter saying, congratulations on the book. I gifted some of your samples to the folks that were involved. I was like, why would you even think that was okay to do without asking me? So, you know, you have those situations and you have to decide like, well, am I going to make a stink about this or am I going to let it go? And it really does help, I guess, maybe train you to figure out which hills you want to die on. In a way, when you do something creatively for a living, you can't be precious about everything. And that's a hard reality because as creatives, we tend to be really, really like possessive about all the ideas and like, this is how it has to be because then it's perfect and it's my creative vision and stuff like that. The reality is that, and I mean, this is very, very true for the industry that I'm in, ultimately someone else, you know, especially if you're not the one holding the purse strings, there's someone else that gets to make that call. And as much as passionate as you might feel about something, at the end of the day, if you want that book published, sometimes you just have to roll with it. And it might not feel great, but the understanding is that, you know, maybe my priority is this, so therefore I'm going to fight for that, but then I'll let the rest of it go. And if you're, you know, part of that challenge as a creative is that, okay, well, I can't have that. So what creative solution can I offer that they'll accept, that I can put in there, that I'll still make it look good? A lot of times, and I had this like a million years ago when I finished college, I was doing a lot of website design, for example, and my clients had the worst ideas. Terrible color schemes, terrible font choices, just the most awful ideas. But as someone who trained to do creative stuff, you can take a terrible color scheme, and if you're good, you can still make it look good. Like, that's the thing. You should be able to take horrible ideas, terrible suggestions, all of that nonsense, like just bad advice, and still make it work, because that's what a creative person is supposed to do. So I kind of consider that more of a, okay, well, this is the box that I have to work with. I'm in this box. What can I do? Like, what can I do in this box? And to really just push, you know, as far as I can with that. And in a way, I've kind of taught myself to really like that challenge of having those, you know, roadblocks, and still saying, okay, well, this is my arm is tied behind my back. How good can I still make it look? So, you know, I'll try to think of it in terms of that instead of like, I really could have used that arm. So.
Well, I don't want to keep you longer than you need to be. So,
Okay. I mean, yeah, as I'm good at the moment. So if you have other questions or people have questions, I'm really happy
yes.
to.
Do you guys have questions? Does anyone have questions for her? I was very curious about the book stuff because my subscribers keep asking me to make a book about my corgis.
Aw. So cute. Oh my gosh, they're adorable.
They're ice cream flavors. So, but I just keep hearing absolute horror stories about Etsy and Ravelry and stuff like that, and it's like, I don't know.
It's tough. I mean, I've heard of some folks, I never got roped into it, but some people like to try to do like a subscription service. So there's no digital component at all. You mail stuff out pretty much. It's kind of an interesting concept. It's almost like doing pamphlets, like a monthly pamphlet type of thing. You pay and then you get something in the mail. It does really slow down the stealing part of the pattern. So, and it's not something people tend to do so much anymore. So, I mean, what's old is new. Sometimes looking back and saying like, well, what did people do before everything was digitized? And in a way, it does offer maybe a small modicum of protection on the stuff. So it's a thought. I mean, you know, obviously the trade-off is you've got to mail a bunch of stuff and print a bunch of stuff. So, but you know, options.
Okay. How did you break into the field for the first publishing crochet books?
Oh man, it's such an embarrassing story. I have done something.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Because only because I worry I sound a little too flippant when I explain it because it shouldn't have been that easy. Like I literally sent Martingale a box with some samples and an idea for a book, and then I poked them via email and said, "Hey, did you look at my box?" And they're like, "Oh, it's sitting here." I'm like, "Okay, well, let me know." And then they opened the box and they emailed me back and said, "These are great. Let's do a book." And I'm like, "Okay." So like that was it. It's not supposed to be that straightforward. It was like the first publisher I ever contacted. It was the first samples I ever sent. Honestly, it was probably only a few patterns into even designing anything. It was just, I would say that it was probably the marketing piece because that was something I at least had a little more of a developed skill set for. So I would say in general, when if you have the opportunity to put something out there, to have it considered, the pitch is so key. Like, because that's what the person that is looking at this thing, that's what they're taking to the money and the editors. Like, you're making that argument. You're giving them the tools to convince other people that this is a worthy project. And I think because I had an understanding of like, okay, well, lengthwise, I need to make sure I've produced this much. So like there was a table of contents, for example, with the pitch that I put in. So I knew there was enough there. I think sometimes pitches fall short just because it's like, and I have these 5 characters. That's not enough for a book. Like, so, you know, it's understanding the complexities and showing that you did your homework before you pitch, because nothing will get it tossed faster than simply just saying, I got a good idea. Here it is. And then nothing other than I have a great idea. And that happens in publishing, but it also happens in the industry I'm in all the time. And not to throw them under the bus, but my kids do that to me all the time. They're like, hey, Mom, I have this idea for a movie about feral squirrels getting eaten by dinosaurs. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. They're like, make it. I was like, I'm going to need more than that. So like, it's like that sometimes where you're just like, good ideas are great, but there are so many out there and it's so much about the execution. So yeah, I guess, you know, if you're out there and you are interested in pitching to a publishing company, you know, do your homework. There are documents online that can, you can kind of see the templates of like a pitch document. Martingale's, it might even be hanging around out there, even though the company's not there anymore, their document might still be there, and you can look and you can see what their questions are asking. And that can really help you kind of formulate, make sure you know, have that all those ducks in a row before you go out there and kind of put it out there for people to get. So yeah.
Okay. Have you written any ebooks? I sure hope so. Otherwise, I have stolen books.
Well, I have not like actively written ebooks. If my publishers choose to format it and put it out there, I know like I want to say Springhouse Press did a couple.
Please tell me Disney did.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if they choose to do that, it's kind of up to the publisher because they need to format it to, you know, if they choose to do it. Like, this is for Kindle and stuff like that. I don't think it's quite as simple as just doing a PDF. So they try to at least format them for particular devices and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily say like, and this shall be an ebook. I mean, the closest I've ever gotten to that is like I have produced my own PDFs, like rarely, but I have done PDFs on my own. There's even a couple floating around Ravelry that are similar to the chunky crochet characters, the crochet, where I kind of show how to Frankenstein some of the patterns in the crochet, mythological crochet, the Baby Beast book, into, I think I made them into Star Wars characters. But because I wasn't actually, so there's two patterns, there's two like how to convert type of things out there where it shows you how to take the pieces from the book and make like a baby Wookiee and a baby Ewok. And the idea there is that it's that gray area again. Like that's Disney IP, obviously. So, but the idea there is that it's not a written pattern in any way, shape, or form. Like the pattern isn't there. It's basically saying, well, if you put this piece together and this piece together and this piece together, you get something that probably looks like this. And that's kind of where it's left. It would be like, you know, if you wanted to make something that looked similar, you know, simply just describing the pieces you'd have to put together isn't quite the same as saying, here is a pattern for an Ewok and then writing it all out. So again, gray area, might not be totally copacetic with Disney, but I figured at that point, you know, since I wasn't actually writing a physical pattern, it was more of a suggested Frankenstein list, so to speak.
Well, they haven't come after you, so.
Not yet. I mean, they know where to find me, obviously.
How do you work through creative blocks?
I internet surf. There's a lot of really great stuff out there, and you can see what people are doing. Although, funnily enough, it seems like there are kind of these waves of like popularity things. Like, there's a lot of like my Facebook page is getting like inundated with like crochet geodes right now, which is a weird one. So I kind of see what's going on in terms of like what's ebbing and flowing. But in regards to figuring out how to get over a creative block, I think my kids are still kind of a pretty big source of inspiration for me, because when I am thinking of ideas, I'm still thinking in terms of like, what my kids would like to play with. Even if they're older now, if they were younger, I'd say like, well, what would I make that they would really like enjoy? What would they get a real big kick out of? That's where the vehicle book came from. That's where the dinosaur book came from. It was just what they were really into. So maybe, you know, start with, okay, who's my audience? What is my audience into? Who am I appealing to? That's a whole like niche audience thing that you want to make an argument for. Like the Baby Beast book, for example, I was like, okay, well, this is the D&D group. This is the Harry Potter likers. You know, these are the people that like these creatures. And I think the D&D movie was coming out around that time. So I was like, okay, great. This is a good time to do it. We can market it to this crew. That there's a lot of overlap with the folks that like these sorts of things, and probably also do a lot of creative, like, you know, cosplay stuff. So they're going to have some craft skills and stuff. So it felt like there was a good audience in there that could kind of be tapped. So sometimes thinking in terms of like, well, who's my audience first? Then you think, okay, well, what's my audience into? And then is there enough there to make a book? And then once you maybe decide on something, like, let's say you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do a whole series of Pegasus, but I'm going to make them all based on astrological signs. So I'm going to do astrological signs, but they'll all be Pegasuses, and I'll design them all, and they'll all be styled like that. So cool, I'm going to do that. So then I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to go online and see what people are doing in terms of designing Pegasuses. So Pegasus is the plural version. So I'll go online and I will see amazing patterns that people have done. I will not download any patterns. I will not look at anyone's patterns. It's strictly visual. I don't want to even put myself in the same ballpark of possibly accidentally looking at someone's actual pattern. It's got to be strictly, you know, something that I wrote. So I will just use it as visual reference, and I will look at not only crocheted Pegasuses, but I will look at the design stuff that people might be doing on other websites. I'm trying to think of the site that I like to go to. I mean, there's plenty out there. So, you know, if you have like a style you want to go with, I'll kick it into, you know, I'll just Google search it, and I'll give you tons and tons of images, and I'll see lots of different design styles. And maybe I'll come across one that's like a super chunky one, and I'll be like, oh, okay, great. That'll work for crochet. So what also helps, funnily enough, is finding patterns and designs that don't work. It is really, really important to find the stuff that doesn't work also, because you know what to avoid. And for every amazing pattern out there, there's at least, you know, a few patterns that just did not hit that mark.
Well,
yeah. And there's so much to learn from that too. So it's really part of the process to also figure out, okay, well, that looks creepy. That leg, you know, the way they put the legs on that just doesn't work. So I know not to separate them into 3 pieces. I know that I have to keep the leg at least in 1 piece or something like that. So, you know, I'll mark the designs I like. Midjourney is now a thing. So you can feed AI information. Like maybe you have a style in mind and whatnot. You can have AI kick stuff out for you. I would not let AI kick a pattern out for you. But I think from a visual standpoint, if you wanted to just kind of spitball some graphics in there, just to see how close you can get to like what you have in mind, that's not a bad place. For me, and I know it's weird to hear someone who does art say anything that positive about AI, since, you know, it's all coming for our jobs and all, but I find that it's a really, it's just helpful. I treat it like a sketch pad, just something to spitball real fast. And, you know, I was like, oh, well, that kind of works, but what if it looks like a chunky? And it's still going to be faster than how I can sketch. Because if I'm sketching, I probably have to find reference anyway, and I'll get there. But like, for me, getting stuff done quickly is kind of what I need. So I will sometimes feed AI just ideas that I might want to try and see what it comes up with in terms of the style and the look and stuff like that. And if it comes up with something good, I might sit there with my sketchbook and just redraw it in a way where I know that now from a structure standpoint, that'll work for crochet. So in regards to having roadblocks and creative blocks, designer block, I think sometimes people maybe put themselves in that vacuum and get frustrated that they can't just come up with it on their own without some reference, some help. There are folks out there that probably even think like, well, that's cheating. You're going online and you're finding stuff out there and you're just looking at other people's stuff. Everything that we do, all the professionals in my industry, like, reference is just so key. You have to look at other reference. You have to see what works. You have to see what doesn't work. You have to see what people like. And that's going to inform a lot of your choices and a lot of decisions of like where you think you want to spend your time. Because creative endeavors are a lot of time, and it's valuable time. And it's not respectful to your creative process to spin your wheels like that if you don't need to. So I don't think people should be afraid of going online and just surfing around, throwing their ideas out there. You know, if once you decide who you want to make your patterns for, you can go out there and start looking for reference, generating your own reference in some cases. And I think that will often help. That'll inspire you because you'll come across something at some point where you're like, oh, that's so cool. And hopefully that'll springboard you into other stuff. So yeah, go do research. Lots of research.
Well, I know personally that I was inspired by something that I saw, but I thought of a way to take it in a totally new direction, because it's like, okay, you have a base idea.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, you know, the Nutcracker is not something that's new, but I have seen so many versions of the Nutcracker ballet, and all the costumes are different. Sometimes some of the characters are switched out. Yeah. I mean, you can have the same idea, but it can go a million different directions. Same with patterns for the Nutcracker. I mean, you know, how many ways can you make a ballerina? The answer is a lot.
A lot of ways. Oh, yeah.
And I think that's really cool. So when people are like, it's like, oh, it's another Nutcracker pattern. It's like, yeah, but before you go, oh, it's another Nutcracker pattern, look at it. Maybe there's something unique about it that's like, oh, I guess this is kind of completely different, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point. And I think that getting back to kind of that initial idea of like, well, who's my audience? Like, who am I making this for? If you design that nutcracker with this audience, like, I'm going to make a nutcracker that's going to appeal to all the people that love cats out there. I'm going to do something that all the kitty lovers are going to see and they're going to be like, oh, this is amazing. Or I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make a nutcracker for all those goth emo people that like to crochet. And I'm going to do the color scheme
That would
like
be
that.
so weird.
Right? Or I'm going to mash up the nutcracker with Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to give it an Alice in Wonderland mix. And it's going to be maybe even dark and gritty and stuff like that. So there's like places you can go that you can put a twist on something. But as long as you know ultimately who you are pushing that out to, because if you just kind of push it out there and say, I hope someone likes this, maybe that person will find it, maybe it won't. Like, but if you kind of know what your audience is, you can steer that pattern towards them. And that's ultimately what we want. We want our patterns to be looked at and used and purchased and made. But if we don't know who we're designing it for, it's going to be hard, or much harder to get it into the right hands, so to speak. So that is a really important part of it, like just making those choices to begin with, knowing who this is for, and who your crafters are. You know, in deciding complexity is a really important part of that. Like, I want my beginner emo crafters to really love this, you know, that sort of stuff. And then that'll, you know, kind of inform the complexity of what you would want to do. So yeah, there's stuff you can think about beforehand, before you even get to that creative choice. There's at least boxes you can check. And I think that helps you at least get going. So
I always wonder about the people on YouTube who they do tutorials and stuff, and some of their characters are really close to the actual IP. And I always wonder, it's like, you know, YouTube pays them. So does that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. There's just so much out there that unless they get flagged, unless their audiences are big enough to start garnering, you know, attention, it's a crapshoot. I mean, like, you could be some rinky-dink person and just, you know, you got served up on someone in someone's server at some studio accidentally, and oops, like, they caught you. So as I said, you know, kind of using those little tags of like inspired by, or like, you know, blue furry space alien character, like that, you know, that doing the descriptor, but you know, it's obviously that character. You know, you're kind of, you know, roulette with that sort of thing. You might get caught, you might not. You know, the thing is that if you do get caught, then you're on their radar. So, you know, to say that, oh, I'll just take it down, because, you know, normally you'll get a cease and desist letters. Not that I've gotten any myself, but like, my understanding is that they're just not going to start suing you right away unless you're like, you know, doing something really egregious with the IP, but they'll certainly tell you to take it down immediately. And if you get reported, that might mean your whole channel gets taken down. So, you know, one indiscretion type of thing could kind of unravel a lot more than just that one pattern. So, you know, people take that risk just because of the mass amount of just videos and stuff out there that they just, you know, hope that no one will notice. So, you know, it's maybe it's up to your level of risk taking if you want to do stuff.
I mean, I personally have on my channel, I have Harry Potter inspired characters, but they look like this. I mean, can you even tell that it's Harry because he has glasses and a sweater?
Yeah.
And I call them the boys. You know, I think I even renamed it today because I was trying to think of something really stupid. And so I was like, glasses, ginger, and golden locks. And so it's the three boys, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know, we'll avoid the names. We'll avoid, like, you know, the actual descriptors. At the end of the day, the copyright stuff, the IP stuff gets sticky and tangly because you're still utilizing the IP to attract the audience. So the audience that you are appealing to, you are appealing to them by leveraging that IP. Even if you're not calling it that, that is that you are aiming for that audience. That's what I'm, you know, been talking about audiences before. the idea that you know that this is the audience you're targeting, and this is an audience that was created by that IP. So it's almost like a weird ownership of the audience, that you're now leveraging their IP to take a piece of the audience's money or time or attention and stuff like that. So that's kind of part and parcel with why companies go out of their way to make sure they're protecting it, because it's, we all say, oh, well, it's because it's the IP and they're protective of Stitch. No. They're protective of Stitch, but they're also protective of the audience that loves Stitch, because ultimately that's who, that's what we are protecting here. We're protecting the audience, and then the marketing and profits and stuff that come from that, because that's what makes IP valuable. So even naming it something else or calling it something else, understand that it's the audience and the audience that's being leveraged by that, the unspoken IP, that's why you get legally in hot water sometimes. But I hope they don't go after. That's, I mean, like, not describing it as anything but, like, from a descriptive standpoint, obviously they wouldn't have much to say. So as I said, it's everyone's risk level of risk tolerance. But those lawyers are pretty busy.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen it's really, I know that the IP stuff can get sticky, but it's really wonderful when I have seen these. The Potter Collector used to review these handmade small business like subscription boxes.
Mm-hmm.
They literally took things from the book that the movies never even touch on.
Yeah.
Made like, if this tea shop had a specialty, this is what it would look like.
Yeah.
If this wand shop made a wand with, I don't know, dust from a unicorn or something, this is what it would look like. Mm-hmm. They are more beautiful than anything you will see in any mass-produced anything. And it's like, you pray they never get caught, just because no company could do this right.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, you get that beautiful handcrafted, from love type of effect on there. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm back on Long Island. There's this really fun, like, little coffee house called the Witch's Brew. It's really close to Hofstra University on Long Island, and obviously total hangout for people that were probably into Harry Potter. Of course it would be, but because it is generic, there's nothing about it that is inherently a Harry Potter thing. Like, there's no, like, sorting hat in there. Like, there's not little markers to kind of indicate that they're specifically looking for that audience. Like, that would be an area that's pretty safe. So certainly, like, play around the edges of that sort of stuff. It's when when you're kind of very specifically pointing to something that is from that IP in order to get that audience in there, that's when you kind of, as I say, can get into that weird gray sticky area where you have to be careful. But yeah, it's tricky.
Does anyone else have any questions before she goes? Well, while we're waiting for questions to pop up, I have one. What are some ideas that never happened, but you liked them? You liked the idea, but it just didn't work out.
Oh man, I have a Google Doc with all this stuff on it. I think I had, like, instruments, crocheted instruments.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we come from a musical family. My husband was a musician, and then he switched over to law. But I also played instruments in college. So I thought, oh, like, again, my audience are kids. I want imaginative plays. I want things that my kids will play with that'll keep them away from the TV. Like, that's actually a lot of my inspiration there. So there was that. There was, I'm just trying to think. I'm sure there was other IP stuff that I was coming up with. I think at one point I was like, oh, I can do Disney double knits. I got into double knitting for a little while, and I actually have a couple patterns out there. One which I did get DreamWorks to, like, sign off on. It's been so long. I don't know if I put it up there now. I have the email, so I guess I have some cover, but we'll see. But there was a whole thing where I wanted to do Disney motifs on reversible items, using that double knit technique. I think there's a really popular one out there that I guess Disney has kind of let slide. It features all sorts of cool Star Wars motifs and stuff like that, and it's like a double-sided scarf. So that one is all over the internet. So I thought that there was some potential there, but not only scarves, like, oh, I can do a reversible tote, I can do a reversible hand warmers and stuff like that. I haven't really done a lot of garments, so I think really any idea that I had that was garments probably didn't really get too developed, because there's just so many people out there that already know how to do garments really, really well that I don't really know if I want to get in competition with them. So yeah, I haven't really done much for clothing. Let's see here. I could probably pull up the list. I have it somewhere. Let's see.
I was just wondering if there was like one, that was just kind of like, oh man, I really wish that had
Got
done.
away thing. Yeah, let's see here. Crochet ideas. Is that all Google Docs? Crochet ideas. Book and bonus patterns ideas. It said, and honestly, having it online, a Google Doc, is great, because if something pops into your head, you can just pop onto your phone and just put it on the list. You're like, okay. Let's see here. I had to make a monster one, which was like pieces, like mix and match pieces, where you get like, a book with chapters of nose and chapter of eyes and chapter of this, and you can throw it together. The mix and match thing got pretty popular with there's been some other books that have been really, really popular with that. So again, it would be kind of a crowded territory. Alphabet letters, all sorts of travel stuff, collection of teddy bears, collection of just dragons. I had Bible stories on here, so like crocheted versions of like all the really fun kid-friendly Bible stories. Like
That's what I'm working on.
Hey, see?
Yeah.
I totally have it. I haven't started on it. You're all good.
These little guys are gonna become Bible characters, and I'm gonna make it. And it's funny that you said the little drawstring thing, because I'm gonna make a little pouch that all the little teachers can like have. This is one story. This is another story. And like for Daniel, I'll probably make it, instead of a pouch, I'll probably make it the cave. And then
Oh, that's so cool. You can have a whale on one of them for like Jonah and stuff like that. Yeah. Let's see here. And then I had the activity books. So yeah, I think that's the one that I'm kind of like bubbling about right now, just trying to figure out like that soft, quiet activity, like carry on type of thing. Seasonal monthly elves with their themed houses. Yeah, it's trying to get out for it's just a whole bunch of stuff. And then like there's a million like knitting ideas, a potions play set. Again, like you could do that and not really if you want to do a whole wizarding kit. If you kept it generic, you're fine. It's still that audience and stuff, but then no one can really say like you were trying to attract that audience on purpose by actually like leveraging stuff from a book series or something like that.
And I don't really think that's fair to say that you just want that audience, because it's like people grew up with Sabrina the Teenage Witch, people grew up with Hocus Pocus, people grew up with Bewitched. I mean, that could be any exactly. Magical whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been that general audience that really loves that sort of lore. I think that because Harry Potter is so ubiquitous now, we kind of just interchangeably say like that audience is that audience. Like, it doesn't belong to Harry Potter exclusively, but because they obviously use so much of the generic lore that it becomes almost tricky saying like, well, is that Harry Potter specifically? I mean, like, we've always had wands, but now if I use a wand, am I going to get in trouble? Like, I think we've always said broom riding was a thing, but now we have Quidditch. So, like, can I still have a broom riding thing? So, if you're ever worried about it and stuff, as long as it's been established ahead of time, that it's probably fine. It's when you get into, like, specifically themed, specifically merchandised, specifically, trademarked to that, the creatures they designed and came up with, the schools and stuff that they came up with. I mean, you could very easily come up with a wizarding school kit. Not one of their, schools and stuff like that, and it's just generic stuff. But if you want, to crochet a whole like sending your wizard or like your little witch or wizard off, that would be awesome. Like that would be really fun. It would be totally fine to do that. You can even include like a little pet in there, that's all generic. That's all just part of the lore anyway. So, you can do that sort of thing.
Yeah, they were not the first ones to use pets.
Oh, no, not at all. Familiars have been around for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So, that would be really fun. Like you could do a vet kit, but like wizard vets. You can do like all the creepy little familiars and stuff like that, but you have to treat them like with wizard and witchcraft stuff. My daughter's really into like veterinary stuff. She's always watching those shows at dinner.
Oh dear.
I don't want to watch a cow.
I'm very sorry.
So she's into that. And then I was like, oh, I can make a, well, that's just it. You know, you see what your kids are into. You're like, oh, I could do a crochet kit for that. And I wouldn't have to watch it over dinner. So.
I don't have a problem with kids wanting to watch, you know, good, clean entertainment. But I do believe, I mean, I was a nanny, and I just don't love that people just want to keep putting kids in front of screens. Whenever I was there, you know, the kids would want to be in front of screens, but I wouldn't even make them craft or anything. I would craft in front of them.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, what's that?
What's that?
And all of a sudden you've got their attention. Because sadly, it's different.
Well, that's just it. You know, I think that's, as someone who, as I said, I sit in front of a computer at least 8 to 10 hours a day. Now in particular, like we're doing 10s and 12s, like that's, so it's a lot of computer time. At the end of the day, if I unplug this computer, whatever I just worked on doesn't really exist. And I know that it exists somewhere on like in a cloud hard drive someplace, but like if I had it like locally on my computer and I unplugged it, like whatever I did, it vanishes. It's not real. It's not something I can hold. And that's, I think, what is the beauty of any sort of craft like that for kids, because, or adults for that matter, because you kind of want something real when you've put the time and energy into it. So, I mean, that's why I'll absolutely continue doing that. Plus, I always assume that crocheting will help kind of stave off some of that carpal tunnel from having to do mouse stuff and keyboard stuff so much.
But yeah, you're using different muscles, so.
I like to tell myself that. Like, it'll make it better.
Well, the other thing is, you know, people, we get so much negative stuff in the amigurumi world. I'm an amigurumi designer as well. I'm much newer than you, but I try. And, you know, people are like, you're a grown woman. Like, why are you making toys? And it's like, maybe because it makes me happy.
Yeah.
And who is it hurting? And, you know, maybe I'm just making something to sit on a shelf. But when it sits on the shelf and it makes me smile, or it makes my audience smile, who is it hurting?
Yeah. I mean, I make kids' cartoons. At the end of the day. This is not high art and stuff like that. But I mean, it makes people happy. And I mean, honestly, is there really much better things you can do with your life other than making people's lives better in some way, shape, or form? I mean, you know, this is a form of entertainment and joy and crafting, and like, I mean, how could you possibly go wrong with that? So,
yeah. It's funny that you said that you were working on Zootopia 2, because I think they've actually made a Zootopia kit. Somebody has.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think I've seen it.
And I was actually genuinely curious. I was like, I wonder if anyone's going to make one for number 2, because they are adding so many new characters, and we know that because of the teaser trailer, like flashed all those characters at you really fast.
Yeah,
holy cow, I couldn't even count that many.
We had a lot of animators all kind of quickly and it's a funny thing to get assigned. You're like, here's your shot. It's 2 frames long. So you're sitting there basically. I mean, there's a whole section of the movie where everyone's just kind of doing marketing poses and marketing stills. So that's kind of what's fitting in there. Actually, when I started on the film, they were just wrapping up with that teaser. So one of my coworkers had been working on the dance party scene. All of that was done by like all of that dancing that was happening. That was one person animating all of that.
Oh
so
my God.
It was a heavy lift for him.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really funny the scope of the assignments you get when you're doing that sort of stuff. Sometimes you get these like elaborate crazy shots, and sometimes you get a shot that's got 2 frames long, and the character's like half blinking, and then it ends up in a teaser trailer. So you never really know what's going to end up on your plate.
Did you finally get to do a character? Because you said you were doing backgrounds and stuff for so.
Yeah. I'm doing some background stuff for this movie. I'm working on a few shots now, and it was a bit of a getting thrown in the deep end for the shots, which I was excited about. So because the movie is due so soon, it's very all hands on deck. So I'll probably we're all kind of doing a mix of stuff. Like even our character animators are getting thrown cycles every once in a while, just because Zootopia in general, I want to say that movie, Big Hero 6 also. I'm trying to think of the ones that were super crowd heavy. Zootopia in particular, I think, is uniquely crowd heavy because
all the animals are different.
All the animals are different. So I can't take my walk cycle off the wildebeest and put it on the lemmings. Like I got to design an entirely new walk cycle for the lemmings, for example. So, even just having a walk cycle, you can't just copy it out. You've got to do a new one. And with us, we would, before we could animate anything, we would have to go online and find a YouTube video of that animal doing something similar to what the ultimate action that we were going to have was. So, for example, I had to.
It's so hard because they're on 4 legs mostly, and you got to put them on 2.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like, if you look at the animals, there is some understanding that the anatomy is shaped a certain way. So, like, for example, you notice a lot of the animals don't have much shoulder. Because they just don't. Like, that's not where they're, if you look at the anatomy, the clavicles of like someone that stands upright is very, very different from an animal that's going to be really pulled forward. So if you notice that the Zootopia animals tend to be very slope shouldered, and that's on purpose. Like, we do that on purpose because from an anatomy standpoint, that's how they would be built. So like, we don't want them to look like humans in animal clothes. We want them to look like the animals, and move like the animals. And have mannerisms like the animals. I had recently we had a sequence where there were otters hanging out in the water, and I got like a business otter. I had a business otter. They were like floating with cell phone. That was the directions I got. So I was like, oh, I've absolutely seen what happens when you drop a cell phone into an otter exhibit, and I think most people have seen these things in an aquarium. They will take your phone and they will try to crack it open like a clam. And that's what happens. And it's very funny, except for the person whose phone it was.
Right.
But like, there's plenty of videos out there of otters with these phones and just smashing them against rocks. So I decided to add a laptop to my otter, and I had him floating and with the cell phone. And I decided to make it like a bad cell phone reception type thing. And my otter's trying to talk, and you can see him saying hello, hello, and it's not working. And then I have him smash the phone against the laptop because he didn't have, like, I couldn't put a rock on his stomach, so I figured the laptop would help. And to present this, I had to show the reference video of this otter smashing this person's cell phone before I could show them why I made that choice. And that's how we were informing what we were doing. Because if I just kind of did it, like, it might not have gone through because there wasn't any sort of tie down to realism in that instance. So we're doing a lot of that, and it really helps because we'll look at how they're moving, and it helps with the weight. Small animals work different from big animals and stuff like that. So we do need to see how they behave themselves, and then we try to incorporate that into performance. So yeah, Zootopia is a really interesting to study, and I highly recommend just watching the movie and just looking at the background stuff because there's a lot of stuff in there.
I'm definitely gonna look more at it now.
Yeah. The Minions, the Despicable Me movies are really, really amazing movies. Just watching background characters too. My understanding, yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. I understand that they threw a lot of animators at their backgrounds, which is why there's all these like amazing little vignettes. If you pay attention, they're back there and they're hysterical. So yeah, that's
really cool. I'm actually very excited to see that movie, but now I'm more excited because my favorite Amigurumi designer was one of the animators.
It'll be a good movie. We're very excited about it.
So I'm definitely going to look out for your otter.
Yes. Well, they're very busy scenes and stuff, but they're definitely in there. Actually, and when we do have human movies, because I have kids, and sometimes we'll have kids to animate. So there are definitely a few cycles out there that my kids performed, and then I got to put them in. So my daughter, for example, if you watch like Raya or Encanto, because a lot of times the cycles just get bumped to the next movie and get copied onto those crowd characters. So if you ever see a background character from Raya onwards that is hopscotching, that's my daughter.
Oh.
So she's got her own little cycle, and it's pretty, that's hopscotching is pretty specific. So like, it's recognizable. So whenever you're a hopscotcher, that's like, I put her in there. So she loves that.
Yeah, she's like, I'm in a Disney movie. That's really cute. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I don't want to take up any time. It's been a while, but Thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I'm still totally fangirling because you were like my favorite amigurumi designer that has ever existed. So your style is so fun and so unique, and your patterns are written well. Dear world, take note.
Oh my gosh.
And they're all your books are so different. You know, you go so many different places with them and stuff. I actually don't have any of the creepy ones yet, but they know they're on my Amazon list, and oh, it's Prime Day. Maybe I'll get some.
I have my publishers send boxes, so I definitely have copies of stuff squirreled away, so I can always send you one.
Well, she may or may not be sending one for a giveaway, so just putting that out there, people. Yeah. But thank you so much. I would love to continue to email, like if I have any questions or anything, can I?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Well, you have a good night.
Thank you very much. All right. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to hang out a little bit longer. And wasn't this cool? This was so cool to have a amigurumi designer talk to us and tell us about, you know, what it's like to get a book published, work with IPs, all that kind of stuff. I really think this is fun. I am actually starting a series. I'm hoping to have at least one interview a month with either designers, yarn dyers, people who just started to crochet. I find that interesting too. And hold on. Is Megan having trouble here? Are you good? Okay. All right. Yeah, so I would love to interview, especially anyone who has a channel. So if you would like to email me at thespooniestitcher@gmail.com if you would like to be interviewed on here, then please let me know. Okay, I have missed most of these comments, so let me kind of just blast through these here. I just turned in the dinosaur one, and I'll probably buy it. Oh, from your library? Yeah. Oh, it's okay, Teresa. Thank you so much for being a moderator. Interview was cool. Okay. Yeah, if you guys have not gotten any of her books, I'm going to give you the link to her website. And she's also on Amazon. And I highly recommend these books. They're written very well, and they're a lot of fun. And her style is so different than a lot of designers. I really appreciate when you can tell that the designer's style is completely different. I love that. So, oh, hi, Shannon. Another yarn is here. So real quickly, I'm just going to scan through. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Katie Lou, Kimberly, Jana Kay, Nova, Blair, Kim, Lori, Donna, Heather, Millie. Hey, Lexi. Opal. Is that everyone? Oh, nope. Pearl, Paige, Micah. And I think that's everyone. Definitely adding that Baby Beast book to my wish list. Yes. So this is one of the ones that she sent me. And y'all have to see the cutest illustration. She drew it. It was so cool. Yeah, this book is really cool. The baby Minotaur is the one that's kind of pulling at my heartstrings. But here is a look at the characters in the book. So this one I am almost positive is on Amazon. And I cannot decide which one I want to make first. Ugh, I love mythical creatures, as you all well know. And yeah. Let's see. I think... Hold on. I need to open another tab. I already have 4 tabs open. Oh my goodness. I thought I had this pulled up already. I did not. Yes, it is on sale. I thought so. It is 41% off. So those of you who wanted the Baby Beast book, it is on sale. And I will put the link in the chat. Here you go. Yep, just like Michelle said. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yes, the Baby Beast is on sale. I will look up the Cuddly critters. Let's see. Creepy Cute is also on sale. And let's see. I think those, oh, and the first version of the Ornaments. Oh no, the second one is too. Both ornament books are on sale. I don't know if this is going to fit in the chat. We'll see. Can I send that? Yes, I can. Okay, there. There's all her books right there. Okay, so I need to talk about the people I actually work for. So I need to talk about OPhire real quick. OPhire has their new crochet hooks for the summer collection. We have Lagoon, which is like a sandy beach with the ocean. There's also Watermelon, which I'm just saying, it's very much Wicked core. But it's called Watermelon. And Beach Ball, which I think is my favorite. Yes, I know, the non-glittery one is my favorite. Shocking. So these are on the website right now. And if you go to the website and you scroll down till you see the little box where it's a little present, you can enter the giveaway to win a full set. They also have little stitch marker sets to go along with it. So there's this one. And this one. Lagoon is your favorite? Let's see. So these are also on the site. I will link the website in one moment. Here it is. And even if y'all just want to click on the link, don't have to buy anything. OPhire likes seeing that you clicked it. So that's something. The other thing is Twice Sheared Sheep. They have, hold on. I'm sure the number has changed within the last hour, so I'm going to look it up again. They don't have a ton of advent calendars left, but they have a few. There it is. $1,384. We started with 3,000 people, so yeah, it's going fast. And I do have some frequently asked questions that were answered for the advent calendar. Are some of the items from last year repeated? No. Every advent calendar every year is completely 100% different. They do not repeat anything. The only thing they repeat is, you know, the row counter, the stitch markers, the tins, but it's going to be different designs, and it's going to be exclusive to the advent calendar. You will not be able to buy them in the shop. They're very big about exclusive for the advent calendars, and I appreciate that. I think if you're paying that kind of money, it should be just for you. There will be a pattern, and it's going to be kind of like a crochet/knit along, but you do not have to do that. You do not have to participate. You can just keep the pattern and do it at another time. They do give you the yarn in the advent calendar for whatever you're supposed to make. So you shouldn't have to buy any extra yarn, and you should have enough. And remember, it's going to be a beautiful hand-dyed yarn. Like this. Not this color, but like this. Because all of their yarns are by lovely little hand dyers. Can't decide if I like watermelon or lagoon best. They're all pretty. So yes, we have a few advent calendars left. So you might want to think about it. I mean, if you're going to get an advent calendar this year, I'm just going to say it. If you're going to just get one, this is the one to invest in. It's well made. It's unique. The theme is never Christmas or the holidays because they want you to be able to use stuff all year long. So this year it's fairy tale. Well, it's called storybook because it's fairy tales, nursery rhymes, and classic novels. That's the theming for all of these items, including the pattern. So I'm really excited because I love all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So I will put the link for Twice Sheared Sheep. Also, their summer shop is open. So if you want to look in their summer shop, now's a good time. Those are seasonal items. And Twice Sheared Sheep is very good about really not repeating any designs in their shop. So if you see it this year, it doesn't mean you're going to see it next year. They only have a few things that they keep that are the same. And that must be because Dawn, the owner, really likes it. So she keeps it in there. By the way, I found out all the artwork you see on Twice Sheared Sheep was designed by Dawn. And I think that's so cool that not only does she run the company, but she has time to she decides to do all the artwork. Okay. Wonder Woman here. So I think that's amazing. And let me see. What else do I need to talk about? Oh, yes. Premier is having another sale. It's a very small sale. It's very small items. Very, very few items, I should say. But their Parfait Chunky is on sale. Both the regular and the like speckly one. And some other of like the thicker yarns. Where is the picture? There it is. So the Parfait Extra Large Pom Pom Party, Bamboo Select, Puzzle Cotton, Puzzle Shimmer, Puzzle Solid, and then Puzzle, Anti-Pilling Everyday Worsted, Anti-Pilling Everyday DK, Anti-Pilling Chunky Bamboo, and Anti-Pilling Everyday Bulky. Along with Parfait Chunky, both in the regular fruits and the pom-pom. It's 35% off or 20% off. Why they're different, I don't know, but they are. So there we go. One moment. Okay. Oh, thanks, Nova. And I think, let me just check something real quick. I am almost positive there is a sale going on for this one. Let me see. I thought there was a code. I'm not seeing it. Okay, never mind. Now you might have seen on other channels that Volari, the pillow for knitting, crocheting, gaming, reading books, etc., has a new cover that is specifically for crafters. They also have a new website completely. It is now called Craft Ease, which isn't at all confusing because it doesn't sound like Craft Easy at all. Yeah, I begged them not to change the name. They don't care. The only thing we could convince them of is don't change the Volari pillow's name because people know the name Volari. And craft something is everybody's brand. So, you know, they do have a new cover. So if you want to take a look at their new website, again, the clicks help me. Thank you. And yeah, I was asked to work for Cato after doing my review for the iCord maker, and I declined. Not that I think there's anything wrong with their products. I actually think their products are very well made, and they did send me another one that I'm going to review probably in the next month. I just don't feel comfortable being an affiliate for them. It's a personal thing, but anyway, I was able to get that code for you that one time, so if you were able to take advantage of that, great, but there will be no more codes for anything from that company because don't know how I feel about it. Also, nitpicks. Have you heard? They had an infestation of carpet beetles at their warehouse in Ohio and didn't inform their customers. The customers informed them because they were getting packages with carpet beetles. Do you have any idea how hard those are to get rid of? Oh my gosh. So if you recently got an order from Knitpicks, put your yarn in the freezer. Please. Do not bring the boxes inside your house. Check everything before you bring it inside. And honestly, just don't buy from them for now. That also might go for We Crochet because they do share inventory sometimes. And I don't know where that yarn comes from. I don't know if they share a warehouse or not, but just in case, you might want to be cautious, at least for summer. As you know, it's hot and the bugs come out. But yeah, I'm not too thrilled with the fact that people have literally gone on, at least that I know of, Twitter and Instagram. I don't have TikTok. They're probably on there too. Saying that some of the responses they got from Knitpicks were less than cordial when they informed them of this. And yeah. So that was a choice. And gross. Okay, I think that's all I have to talk about, you know, business-wise. The channel, what's coming up on the channel? I have a big premiere haul because I took advantage of several sales and I just decided to just kind of hoard the yarn for one big video. I will have a very big Amazon Prime Day haul when I get my stuff. Whew, yeah. I spoiled myself a little bit. I decided to. I'm almost at 5,000. I decided to celebrate. Why not? I am working on a tutorial. I'm not saying what it is, but if you were on Teresa's live last night, you know a hint of what it is. And I'm working on a non-Amigurumi project because I had a poll in my Facebook group and y'all want to see more non-Amigurumi things. Okay, I can do that. And this week, well, you know, next week, the 17th, let's just put it that way. The 17th will be the very first video for Teresa and my Back to Basics series. So if you're new, the Back to Basics series is the two of us are teaching you the exact same thing, but the point is you have two different teachers who teach two completely different ways, and so maybe something will make sense. Or maybe the combined videos of watching both of us, maybe pieces of each of us will make sense to you. So you have, that's why it's Back to Basics. You have two teachers, and we are teaching you all the way from what do you truly need to start crocheting and why, all the way to the magic ring or cinch circle or adjustable ring or all the billions of names that it's called. And then in the fall, we will be doing Beyond the Basics. And that way, now you know the basics. Now you can start to learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's where the granny square would come and play, how to read a yarn label, all of that kind of stuff. That's where that would show up. So I hope you're really excited. Even if you're not a beginner, I strongly recommend watching these videos because something might make sense better, or you might even get like a clearer picture of something. Like you knew how to do something, but hearing it explained this way now makes even more sense. Or you might learn some shortcuts that you could use. You know? Personally, I think the way that I teach how to work into a chain is considered a shortcut because I save myself work later. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Teresa and I are really excited. All of my stuff is filmed. I'm still editing, but I've got July done. Now I'm editing August because we are going all the way through the summer. So we're starting on the 17th of this month and we're going all the way through the end of August. So it'll be a lot of fun. And then we will take a short break because of the Decade Divas. Woo! Who's a Decade Diva here? Let me know. If you are a Decade Diva, leave me a thumbs up or a heart or something. I would love to know who's here. So yeah, we will be starting the Decade Divas September 2nd will be the first video for Decade Divas. There will be about 6 videos a week. I think it's 3 people on each day. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Teresa and myself are first, and we are also joined by Heather at Heather's Creative Corner. So she's first with us. She's very brave to go with us because that's not as much time as everybody else, because it's, you know, September 2nd is right there. So yeah. Yes, Lori is a Decade Diva. Nova is a Decade Diva. I like it. So, as you heard me say to Megan, yes, I am working on Bible story tots that you can use to work, do children's church, or your kids can play with at home, or just whatever. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's a project that I'm working on probably for next year. I was thinking about doing nativity tots this year, but I think I'd rather give it more time, and maybe that'll show up next year. So yes, Michelle, you are a Decade Diva. That's true. So yeah, I don't really have anything new to show you guys, unless you weren't here at the beginning. I used Megan's book to make this cute little cutie. The face is different from hers because I was just trying to use up my scrap black yarn. He's so cute. So I used a full skein of the Hirschner squishy plus about a third of a skein of another one. So he's a yarn eater, but he's cute. I forget what his name is in the book. Let's see. Danny. Danny the dog. Yeah, I know. It's so cute, right? Let me see. What else is coming up? Oh, I am reviewing one of the worst crochet hook case kits that I think I've ever come across in my life. But it's a funny video. It's also very short. It's very short. Would you repeat what you were saying about you were designing Bible stories? Oh, there was a commercial? Okay, all right. Yeah, I am designing, you know, my little tots. Okay. I am designing Bible story tots that you can act out the kids can act out the story, and Sunday school teachers can use them. Children's church can use them. VBS could use them. You could just make them for your kids or grandkids just for fun. And I was telling Megan, it was funny that she was saying that she wanted like a little case or something to carry her toys around, you know, so that the kids have like a way to clean it up. And that's kind of what I want to do with mine too. I want to have some kind of thing that like you could carry the entire little story, but then it's also part of the story. So like say if you were doing the Garden of Eden, You'd have a tree, you'd have the serpent, you'd have Adam, Eve, maybe the fruit, and then they'd all sit on, you know, something that looks like a little garden, and then that becomes the bag. And then you have all the pieces, you have the whole story, but you also have a way to store it. Because I love organization. If that makes any sense. Does that help you, Michelle? Does that answer your question? So that's what I'm working on. I don't think I'll have any ready before next year. Because I've got a lot going on this year. I got a lot going on this year. But I'm excited to work on it. I'm kind of passionate about this project. So I know it's not going to be for everyone. But that's okay. Because there are some people who would absolutely love it. So, yeah. Okay. I knew this would come up. I am not doing Noah's Ark first thing. Okay? Let me do the smaller ones before I tackle something like an ark. I do want to do that. I mean, I love that idea. But, oh my gosh, that would take a long time. So I think I need to like dip my toe into doing animals for the nativity before I handle an ark. So we'll see. The stories that I'm kind of messing around with right now is I like the idea of Daniel in the lion's den, Jonah and the whale, Adam and Eve in the garden, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And then what was the one? Oh, Samson and Delilah. I think that would be a lot of fun. So those are the ones I'm thinking about right now. If you guys have any favorite Bible stories, please leave them in the comments below if you're watching the replay. And if you're in the comment, and if you're here in the chat right now, leave them in the chat. So that's the idea that I've been working on and kind of keeping to myself, but I don't know. I have a small little group here, so I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think they'll turn out kind of cute. My plan is for them all to be tutorials so that you can make them too. Yeah, I agree. An ark would make a perfect carrying case. I just don't want to make one right now. Yeah, that one, and then trying to figure out how to do a fiery furnace. I don't know. Or a burning bush. I don't know. I love the idea of doing these. I just have to figure out logistics, and that's where it gets sticky. I mentioned the idea of a tot nativity last year, and a lot of you were really on board with that idea. So I definitely want to work on that maybe for next Christmas. And my plan would be that it would be done before Christmas so that you'd have it. Jesus calming the sea. That's a good one. I've also thought about, the loaves and the fishes. That one's pretty visual, so that one would be, yeah. The Good Samaritan. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, like crochet him a little like head bandage that you can put on top. So that's what I've been working on. Of course, I'm always working on corgi designs because they need to exist in the world. We need more corgis. But those probably won't show up till maybe November. And I don't really want to talk about what I'm working on with them because I think the surprise will be really good. It's what I wanted to make last year and I didn't get to. So I'm determined that this year, yes. Yep, loaves and fishes. Mm-hmm. Let me see here. So Megan sent us Am I still here? Can you guys still see me? What's going on here? Why does it say there's no signal? Okay, I guess I'm back. It said I didn't have a signal. But y'all can see me? Okay. All right. All right. That's so weird. It said I didn't have a signal. Okay. These are some of Megan's patterns that she sent us. They are free downloads. So you are welcome to click them. Thank you. Let's see. I knew there was something else I bet my phone will give me a clue on what I was supposed to talk about. Yes. Okay. So I shared this on Teresa's live last night, but Hirschner's is listening to their customers. Yay! They only make a sparkle in variegated until yesterday. Now they make it in solids. In really beautiful colors. So now they make solid sparkle. 489 yards each. 489 yards. Acrylic polyester mix. Metallic mix, sorry. And in 16 colors. So, yeah. Pretty exciting. We have white, Aran, black, and China blue. Midnight pale orchid, soft yellow, and medium gray. Raspberry, eggplant, dark moss, and emerald. Cranberry, Victorian red, blaze, and loofah. Gold is called loofah. Someone explain that to me. So those are on Hirschner's website right now. Oh yes, going back to Twice Sheared Sheep, they finally have new journal patterns. So their planners, their project journals now have new covers. So we have the sweet little Highland cow, who apparently is named Maisie. I just found that out. So this is Maisie. This one is Night Forest. Indigo Grove. Purple Heart. And Teal Heart. So those are the new journals on Twice Sheared Sheep's website, which is in the description box below or in the chat somewhere. And then once again, here are the OPhire hooks. Lagoon, Beach Ball, and Watermelon. If you name them, you have to keep them. Okay, well, I need to go. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you Monday. Thank you so much for being here today. Remember, life happens, yarn helps, and spoonies can stitch it up too.